Well, good morning, everyone. We have quite a docket in front of us, and so we will go ahead and get started. We have a quorum, but I'm sorry if you can go ahead and take roll. Thank you.
Senator Peake, Senator Donovan, Senator Locke,
Here.
Senator Howell,
Here.
Senator Hashmi.
Here.
You have a quorum, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I know we have, I've heard from at least 3 committee chairs who have meetings that are starting in a few minutes or need to get out of here. And so the earliest committee chair request is from Delegate Ware, who has a committee starting at 8:30. So we will go ahead and hear from Delegate Ware.
Like people to sit or
Please. Yes, we'd love to have people sit.
Thank you. Good morning, Madam Chair, and thank you very much for taking up House Bill 2405.
Thank you.
And let me just briefly describe what it does. It would require the State Board of Education in establishing high school graduation requirements to add to the 20 that are already there, one that would require each student to take and correctly answer at least 70% of 50 questions that are from the civics portion of the U.S. naturalization test. It would be required in order to graduate high school. As a career teacher myself who has proctored as many standardized tests as probably anyone in this room, I understand the challenge of adding another standardized test to what we do. But I took this bill because when you think about it, what is the reason for these schools that we support? One of the key reasons is to ensure that all students who come out can answer fundamental questions about who we are as a people and the civics that that are so much a part of who we are. Basically, I'm asking that high school students meet the same requirements as we require for people who come here from another country and become naturalized citizens. It's the same thing. They can take the test anytime during high school, 9th through 12th grades, so that it can be done right when they've finished the proper course and can be prepared. Some of the questions would be things like, what's the supreme law of the land? What are the first 10 amendments to the Constitution called? Name one branch of government, and so forth. So we're not talking about something that's a huge hurdle to get over, but very basic. It's modeled on a 2018 Tennessee law that's been in effect, and I think that's the gist, Madam Chair, and appreciate your consideration.
Madam Chair, question for the
Delegate.
patron.
Yes, please go ahead, Senator.
So are you trying to say that people who actually live here, born here in this country, should know as much as people who come from another country and want to become a citizen?
Senator, that's a very good way of saying it.
Wow, that just sounds odd. Okay, thank you.
Yes, please go ahead, Senator.
I taught government, so I get it. But don't the Virginia government standards already do this?
Not probably as succinctly and clearly as this has it here.
But shouldn't we ensure that the Virginia government standards do what you're trying to do?
Certainly.
Then why don't we do that rather than come up with something new?
Well, sometimes simplicity is a way of getting there. I know, having been through the review process of revising the standards of learning and how those go forward, and there can be controversy, as we've seen recently, on any sort of review of history or government standards. So this is a simplified, distinct way of doing it.
You don't see this as duplication?
I do not.
Are there any other questions, comments? I will just share, Delegate Ware, I actually took the naturalization exam myself. I did it probably when I was 19 or 20 years old. I didn't study for the exam at all because my high school had prepared me for that. I had taken the civics courses, government courses. I didn't open up the little booklet that is provided for individuals who are taking the naturalization exam. I found it very easy because my high school had done an excellent job in preparing me for it. And so I think I share Senator Locke's concerns that we ought to already be integrating this into the curriculum and have it part of our government and social studies programs. And also, one of my concerns is the naturalization exam is primarily memorization, memorizing who the first 3 or 4 presidents are and memorizing the names of the Supreme Court justices. I think ultimately the goal, and I think you agree as an educator, is to make sure that our students are learning critical thinking and able to connect the dots and do research and analysis. And this is memorization. So that's some of my concerns in that regard. But let's open it up to public comment. And before we do public comment, I'll just share that it's the policy of this committee to have limited public comment. So we will restrict this to 5 minutes on either side. And please keep your comments brief. Please be to the point, and please address the bill that's in front of us. So is there anyone here who would speak in support of the bill? Is there anyone here who would speak in opposition to the bill?
Madam Chair, hey, this is my delegate, so,
He's
But-
my delegate. No, he's not my delegate, but my friend.
that's right. But, and I'll be very brief. I couldn't express the concerns that we have more eloquently than you all have. We've got the same things. We're concerned about the duplication. We're concerned it's already being done, and adding one more assessment would not be the appropriate thing at this point in time.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, Chris Jones representing VASCD, we share the same concerns brought upon you. Number one, adding yet another test in an environment where we agree that students are over-test. We have to also trust that the written, taught, and assessed curriculum in the K-12 experience really solidifies that the intended outcomes have been met. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Dr. Emily Yen. I'm from the Virginia Education Association. We object to this bill for many of the same reasons that have been mentioned before. We think that adding another high-stakes test is unnecessary and takes away from instructional time.
Thank you.
All right.
If there are no more speak.
No more, I'd speak. to
Please
the
go
bill,
ahead,
Madam Chair.
Senator.
I tell you, so I've been here 7 years. I guess we've had public schools 100+ years. You've been here, 20+ years? And this stuff isn't in our curriculum. And so when is it going to get in there? And in fact, we've been knocking out civics. My good friend Senator Newman just fights yearly to make sure we don't eliminate civics from our high school curriculum and fighting for it. And it's sad when you see these things on the news frequently. They'll ask somebody who's their president, who's their senator, and they have no idea. They can't name the Supreme Court that it exists, much less the Senate and the governor and the president and the House. And we expect this from people who want to come into our country, but we should expect it from our own citizens to know what is going on. I think it's a great bill. Thank you, Delegate.
Please go ahead, Senator. Your mic.
I'm going to surprise some people by not agreeing with the people I usually agree with on this. I think what's at high stakes right now is our democracy. We saw that demonstrated clearly, and I think the more that students understand and have the background, the more it will do to protect our democracy. So I do support this.
Is there a motion on the? It's been moved and seconded that this bill be recommended for reporting. If you'll call the vote.
Senator Peake, Senator Donovan, Senator Locke, Senator Howell, Senator Hashmi,
No.
ayes 2, noes 2.
Thank you. Thank you, Delegate.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members.
And next, or first on the sign-up sheet, sorry, Delegate Avoli, since you have a committee starting, why don't we go ahead and take you?
Thank you. Madam Chair, the bill is pretty self-explanatory. It codifies what we're currently doing, basically.
The number of the bill is HB.
I'm sorry. This is HB 1816.
Thank you.
1816. And this was passed in 2018. Virginia passed a resolution designating November 7th Victims of Communism Day. This year, the governor included requirements about the teaching of communism in history standards. However, I feel it is important to codify the requirements that our students learn about the dangers of communism so that history does not repeat itself. And it's pretty self-explanatory. I think what's going on in the world today, it's even more important that we do so.
Thank you, Delegate. Is there anyone here who would speak in support of the bill?
Yes, Madam Chair. My name is Vernon Peters,
If you'll please have a seat and speak into the microphone, thank you.
My name is Vernon Peters, representing Virginia professional educators, and we do support this bill.
Thank you. Is there anyone who would speak in opposition? Are there any questions or comments from committee members? We have a opposition. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Dr. Emily Yen from the Virginia Education Association, and VEA opposes this bill. 4 out of the 5 current communist regimes are in countries that are in Asia. We are concerned that this bill would subject Asian American students to anti-Asian sentiments, and we think that we would oppose this bill.
Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Please, Senator,
I
go
have a
ahead.
question for the patron. Delegate Avoli, so I assume this would also include maybe Russia, where they killed
Yes, sir.
how many did they kill? Did you research that as part of this bill, Madam Chair?
Yes, as a matter of fact, the numbers are staggering. It's over 100 million people, sir.
So, yeah, from Russia. So it's really not, Madam Chair, I mean, you're not trying to direct this at Asian countries, are you?
No, absolutely not, sir.
All right, thank you.
Just a question, Senator Peake. Did you mean the Soviet Union or Russia?
Yeah, I'm not that sophisticated. I probably needed better training if I'd taken that naturalization, because I call Russia.
Maybe we did it. Maybe we did it better in Georgia.
I think it was Soviet Union after World War II, and it was the United Russia back before World War II. We got where's Lee Ware?
Well, we no longer have a Soviet Union.
I know, that's why I said Russia.
Okay. Senator.
I don't understand what this bill is trying to do, but don't the world history and geography standards from 1500 to the present and the Virginia and United States history standards of learning include historically accurate examples of communist regimes throughout the 20th century, including the USSR, China, and North Korea, and Cuba already teach historically
You're exactly
accurate
correct.
information?
Yes, ma'am. What this does is puts it in the code that was passed in 2018.
Why would we put this in the code?
I think it needs to be a continuous process so it doesn't go away from us. When it's in the code, it's in the code.
I mean, I don't think that something like this needs to be in the code.
Are there any other questions, comments from committee? Do you wish to speak, ma'am?
Yes, ma'am, I couldn't make it the crowd.
Please have a seat.
I'm Melissa Velasquez, Assistant Superintendent for Policy and Communications at the Department of Education, and we do support this bill. Our revised history standards will address this, and there is no fiscal impact on the department. Thank you.
I'm sorry, did you say there is a fiscal impact?
No, ma'am, there is no fiscal impact. Thank you.
Is there a second?
Donovan would if she were here.
She's not.
Oh.
It's been moved, but there is no second, so the bill fails.
Move to pass by indefinitely.
It's
Thank you,
been,
Madam Chair, members of the committee.
well, let's take the vote.
No.
Pass by indefinitely.
Senator Peake? No. Senator Donovan? Senator Locke?
Yes.
Senator Howell? Senator Hashmi?
Yes.
Ayes 3, noes 1.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the
Thank you,
committee.
Delegate. And our next committee chair is Delegate Davis.
Yes, ma'am. I have 2 bills for you. I don't know if you have a preference.
I'll let you decide.
Okay, let's do
Give the number.
let's do 2490 first, if that's okay. And I have some line amendments for you at the request of the VEA.
Is there a motion for the amendment?
Move the amendment.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Thank you.
The amended language is in front of us.
Perfect. Madam Chair, what you have in front of you is a new set of lab schools. They're called division lab schools. And the reason why they're called division lab schools is only the division can set them up. This was created through a long process working with the VEA, the Superintendents Association, and the School Board Association. It's what I have heard in my 10 years being here is why don't we give the public school system the flexibility of every other alternative education system has? Why don't we give them the flexibility to change their hours or the days? Why don't we give the teachers the flexibility in the classrooms? And that's exactly what this does. This allows a superintendent to have their own, take an existing public school and draw down state funds for innovation inside that school, so they have access to additional monies for their public schools. It allows them to partner with a business. I will tell you that, for example, the apprentice school at Newport News Shipbuilding is very interested in this. They did not want to have to partner with higher ed. They wanted to be able to do something with one of the school systems out there, and this allows the school system to do that and create this in conjunction with an existing public school, have additional flexibility, and be able to draw down state funds. What you see in the amendment is a request from the VEA. The one thing that all the stakeholders agreed on is that we would not mess up any existing applications that were already in the door. And one of them happened to be a private university, Hampton University, with the city of Hampton school system. So so we had talked about putting the language back in that we had taken out to allow private universities to be participatory in college lab schools. It is something the VA asked us not to do. They didn't want that in the initial stuff. So what this bill does is it takes it back out. So unlike what you have in the status quo where private universities can start lab schools today without getting involved with the public school system, after July 1st, they will no longer be able to do that. The enactment clause you see below just says that if an application was already in and received, it may move forward, which is what we did just to protect the applications in, like the Hampton University with the Hampton school system. But that's what this does in a nutshell, and I think this is the first time I've ever stood in front of you with 3 organizations supporting legislation, so it's kind of a unique thing for me, but I'm thrilled about it, and I hope you look upon it the same way.
Thank you, Delegate. Are you saying that no organizations in the past have supported you?
I have, but only Wednesday, Tuesdays. I've never had all 3. It's that trifecta that's always eluded me.
Okay,
So.
thank you. Thank you, Delegate. Are there any questions or comments from the committee? Is there anyone that would speak?
Madam
Yes,
Chairman.
please go ahead.
I really hate to do this, but it's got the word fund in it. And any fund legislation has to go to finance.
I completely understand. It deals with that existing fund that you have that's already created. But if it's the will of the body to send it up there, I'm happy to go up there as well. And if that's the decision of the board.
Well, Madam Chair of Finance.
Well, I guess I did not understand that the fund already exists.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, then it doesn't. I'm
Okay,
sorry.
thank you. Yeah, this fund is the existing fund. What we wanted to do is be able to have these public schools draw down money from that $100 million that was sitting out there. So this allows the superintendent to literally turn to that fund of $100 million, apply to have some of that fund for innovation inside some of these existing schools.
Are there any other questions, comments from committee? Is there anyone who wishes to speak in support of the bill?
I told you, I'm not used to this.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Stacey Haney with the Virginia School Boards Association. This is proof that there's a first time for everything. We've actually been working with Delegate Davis over, since last year, over the course of this session. For years we've been going around and around with the delegate about why don't school boards start charter schools? Why are we opposed to school choice, innovation? So what we did was we worked with the delegate to come up with something that would incentivize local school divisions to innovate, help maybe provide some funding for that innovation, but to keep it within the local school division, to work with the local school board, and to make these innovative programs available to our students who are in the local schools instead of pulling them out of the local school divisions. And so we think that this is a good bill that gives school boards some room to innovate within the system instead of trying to do something that's outside the system. And so we would ask that you support the bill.
If I could ask a question, the delegate had generously come to my office to explain the bill earlier, and also in the explanation that we just heard, it seems that there is going to be a board that's created within the school that is outside of the purview of the local school board. It would be a board within a board. Is that how it's being conceived?
Basically, yes. So, but the bottom line is that the school board would be the one setting it up, and the school board would be the one approving it, and the school board would be the one determining who goes on the board that then runs this division lab school. And so it wouldn't be the same as a school board, which we actually think is a good thing to give it some degree of separation. But at the end of the day, it's part of the public school system, and it falls under the local school board.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, Tom Smith of the Supervisors Association. We are in favor for the reasons that Ms. Haney just stated. I also would say that there are other boards similar to what you're talking about. There are boards for regional schools in which you would have one member from one of the school boards and another member from another, but they're not controlled by those boards other than that. So,
Okay.
thanks.
Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Joel Andrus on behalf of Virginia Beach City Public Schools, and we've been working with Delegate Davis on this. And as you know, we've been asking for a long time about creating that internal flexibility, that internal innovation within our school divisions, and we think this is a great opportunity for us to start developing some more of those programs. So we support the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any speakers in opposition to the bill? I think we have someone working their way forward.
Here we go.
Hey, there you are. Thank you. Good, good. Did you see the amendment?
Yeah, sorry. Hello, Madam Chair. Shane Riddle with the Virginia Education Association. So, we were originally in support of the bill in the House. There was some substitute language added to add certain private institutions into the bill, so we had to change our position to opt to oppose for the reason that we have a standing policy in our organization to oppose any public money going to any private institution. The Delegate Davis did contact me late last evening. It was Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
Sorry. We haven't really had a chance to really dive into the citations that were noted in the proposed amendments. So I think at this juncture we have to remain opposed to it because we haven't had our legal counsel take a look at the language. We know that on the House side there was some concern with some of the exceptions in Section D of the bill. Which those are all code citations. So if you dive into them deeply, you'll see that some of these exceptions we had originally did some research on, right? And had some concerns that language in Section D was conflicting in certain areas. And I don't know if you have read that language or not, but those are just some of the concerns we have with this. Now, we're not totally opposed to these type of schools. We consider them in some ways to be community schools, right? Schools that are established with full community input, that are fully locally controlled, and we do believe in this community schools model. And so, but at this time, we are unable to change our position on this bill because we have not had time to dive into the notwithstanding clause that was added. But we do appreciate that the delegate has really worked with us extensively to try to fix some of these issues that we have brought forward, and we really appreciate that. But at this time, we have to stand in opposition to the bill.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Riddle. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Any other questions or comments from the committee?
A question for the patron. Thank you, Madam Chair. Delegate Davis. So this money is coming from the $100 million that's already been set aside?
Yes, sir.
Is that correct, Madam Chair? So it's not being used currently?
It is. There are applications for it through lab schools, and these will compete for those funds. So what you have today is you have, I know of at least one application, but there can be other applications that are not partnering with public schools that are drawing down these $100 million. This allows literally a superintendent to look at a public school and have that public school apply for these funds for innovative purposes. It creates a level playing field with our public school systems. It's all I've ever been asked for, is to create a level playing field. And so that's exactly what this does.
So this will allow public schools to take those funds that
Yes,
have been
sir.
set aside for this
Yes, sir.
purpose.
Yeah. And if I can address some of the comments here, Madam Chair.
Please go ahead.
And I understand. Everything that you see in the bill in front of you before the amendment was supported by all three organizations, the VEA, Superintendent Association, School Board Association, 100%. I do agree. One thing we all agreed on is that we would not mess up any applications that were already in the system, i.e. Hampton University. And so we drafted some language that put the private schools back in, I think it's Article 1 in the front, that they could do this, because that's what protected that existing application. The VEA did reach out to me. I was on the floor of the House today. This popped up and said, Glenn, we have to, pull the support. We agreed that this wouldn't be in there. I said, I understand, but we agreed that we wouldn't screw anything up on existing things. I went back, and so the reason why this clause came out last night is we've been working on it ever since, trying to figure out how we don't mess up existing applications, but also make sure that we don't allow private institutions going forward to set up lab schools, on their own. So that's what this language does. I will give you my promise that if this language does not do that, and that it does allow private entities to still go it alone, as it does today, I will either change this or pull my own bill. But I can assure you that this is what it does, and I've asked independent attorneys, the AG's office, to make sure that this delivers the promise that I had told all three entities last summer that I would do.
Thank you, Delegate. I share the same concern as VEA. I think if we have this open-ended language, that it establishes opportunities for existing entities that are private entities to engage in this process. We are talking about public education dollars, and it's very critical that we make sure that we are preserving public education as it needs to be preserved in Virginia. I don't see anywhere here where it says it has to be a Virginia institution. So if it is a private entity coming from Michigan, somewhere else, that is opening up the Commonwealth and our public education dollars to be used by entities that have no connections, basically, to Virginia. So that's a concern.
And they would be exempt too, Madam Chair. They would not be able to. Any private entities could not do this.
Are there any other questions and comments? Is there a motion on the floor?
Move to report.
Is there a second? Is there a substitute motion? Is there any motion? There is no second. There's been no second, so the
Thank you, Madam
the
Chair.
bill fails. Thank you.
The second bill we have is House Bill 2341. And this is probably a little bit of a variation of what I had last year in front of you. So the situation I'm trying to rectify is we tell students today that not all students need to go to college, that they can go into the workforce and get a well-paying job, that every student should come out with a skill set that helps them succeed in life. But unfortunately, there's a stigma associated with those that don't get an advanced diploma. And the advanced diploma, the biggest difference between an advanced diploma and a standard diploma is those 3 credits of 3 classes of foreign language or 2 years of 2. And there's that stigma. And so that stigma is what, if we remember this, back when we were in school, we had the advanced diploma, standard diploma, honors diploma. And I mean, to use the terms we had back in the day is, they're not considered as smart, or use the term dumber. And we know these students that come out with these advanced degrees in whether it be advanced manufacturing or robotics or anything, is just as smart as any other student. But we all know how peers can be and how kids are in school. And so what this says is that we will have an advanced diploma, and there will be a diploma as you know it today, which is the foreign languages, 3 years of a language, 2 years of 2. There will be the pathway for an advanced diploma if a child happens to take 3 years of an advanced robotics or advanced manufacturing course, and they will get that seal. What we're trying to do here is, if we're gonna say that not every child should go to college and that they can come out with well-paying careers, let's put our money where our mouth is, or in this case, the words where our mouth is, because we talk about bullying all the time, but we have situations that we literally are creating where we say you don't have to go this route, go this route, but we're literally sending a child down a route where terms like less intelligent, dumber, that sort of thing gets utilized. And I mean, I remember, and y'all probably remember, there were honor degrees back when we were in school. As if you got a diploma and you got a 3.0 GPA, you got the special whatever it was, to wherever top of your whatever, and you sat in a different area. I got a 2.91 GPA. It didn't round up to 3. It stayed 2.91. So I sat in the back. I did not have that. All my friends sat in the front. And so you can imagine what, a child who is literally looked differently at, not because of their abilities, but because they want a different path. And so what this does is this solves that and says, we want you to look at going these routes, and we're not going to make you look as a lesser person or a lesser student because you do. And I hope it's the will of the body to move this forward.
Thank you, Delegate. Are there any questions or comments from the committee?
So what this does is, does this remove world language as a requirement?
No, ma'am. This says that there is an advanced diploma as it exists today that stays in the place. And then it says that if you happen to, instead of taking your world language, you take your advanced robotics, that you get an advanced diploma, but you have to have a robotics seal, right? Or if you take the coding, you have to get the coding seal. But it does not eliminate the advanced diploma as you know it today. It just creates additional.
Okay.
Looks like there are many people here. So who wishes to speak in support of the measure? Is there anyone here in support?
Madam Chair, Tom Smith with the Superintendent's Association. I'm going to take we're in support, and I'm going to take a little different tack than the delegate. Having worked with CTE programs for a number of years, one of the problems that students had who wanted to go for an advanced diploma is enough to take the added advanced CTE courses along with the courses required for the advanced diploma, the foreign language being one. And so we would feel this is another opportunity for students and would ask you to support it.
Thank you. In support?
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Emily Webb at the Virginia Chamber of Commerce. While the Chamber certainly believes that world language instruction is important, we believe that providing this flexibility to students who wish to take this advanced CT coursework to earn these industry credentials is important to strengthening our talent pipeline and addressing our workforce shortage, which currently has over 50% of the job vacancies as middle skill jobs. Access and opportunities to this advanced coursework would lead to students earning more valuable, stackable credentials, increasing employability for these high-demand jobs, and creating greater connections to post-secondary training following graduation. So we are in support of the legislation.
Thank you. If I could ask a question of you. As you point out, we've got high-demand jobs and jobs that are now traversing the globe, basically. And those are the kinds of jobs we certainly want to prepare our students for and jobs that we want to attract to Virginia. Isn't the opportunity to have second or third language skills actually better for our students if they're able to then compete on a global level? Most students around the world will speak at least 2, if not 3 or 4 different languages, and that gives them a competitive edge. We are no longer looking at just Virginia or just the United States. Almost every job now is in some degree a global job and requires not just the language skills, but coming side by side with those language skills is cultural knowledge, cultural competency, the ability to work effectively across many, many different national traditions and cultures. And so I think it's to the benefit that every student have those kinds of language skills. Would the Chamber agree on that?
Certainly, we would agree that world language instruction is important and actually are very supportive of our dual immersion programs. Often those programs start in elementary school. While I'm certainly not an expert in world language instruction, I know I can speak from personal experience. I took 8 years of a world language, 4 years of Latin, and 4 years of French. Did not start that until my middle school years, and am not really able to speak any language at this point. So, providing this flexibility, I think, is what we're most interested in, while continuing to support world language instruction as well as his dual immersion programs.
Yeah, thank you. It's hard to find Latin speakers, right?
Yes. Well, I was going to med school, and that didn't work out.
So thank you. Thank you very much.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Rob Bohannon here representing the Virginia Transportation Construction Alliance. We represent 300 companies that build and maintain Virginia's transportation infrastructure. Like the previous speaker said, it's very supportive of foreign language, and I myself had 5 years of French in high school, but we've spent a lot of time over the last couple of years here looking at policies that meet the 21st century job demand. In-demand jobs, our guys are no different of having labor shortages, having problems finding people. We just see this as a different pathway, another pathway that could help fill some of those jobs. Also, just anecdotally, my sister is a teacher in a rural school district here in Virginia. They have trouble finding foreign language teachers and attracting them to the community. So I know that's a challenge that's out there too. I'm sure other rural districts have that as well. Great for students that want to pursue that, but just like this is a different route that helps prepare students for these 21st century jobs.
Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Just a quick question to the patron again. Didn't you say that we're not doing away with the foreign language requirement for advanced, but we're just creating a separate seal for the other?
Yes, sir. So you can still have an advanced diploma by taking your foreign language requirements. However, if you don't take the foreign language requirements and you take some other advanced courses, you can still have the advanced diploma, different seal.
Just different seal.
Yes, sir.
Gotcha.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Brandon Robinson with the Associated General Contractors of Virginia. We represent over 500 companies in commercial construction. And I would point out that the numbers tell us in the next few years we need over 200,000 craft professionals to continue. And so workforce development remains a huge challenge. One of the big barriers is the stigma with CTE or the inability to encourage students through CTE. So anything that provides an option that encourages that, we would support it. And I would just add a personal anecdote. I was sitting down with my rising 8th grader just this week looking at her options moving forward, and I felt very hemmed in that it was either foreign language or CTE. There was not a way to do both to continue towards that advanced diploma. So for those reasons, we would ask you to support the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers in support? Any speakers in opposition? Please come on.
Good morning. My name is Charles Sones, and I am out of work today where I'm in my 22nd year of teaching Japanese in Richmond City Public Schools. I'm also a member of the Foreign Language Association of Virginia, and I want to address some of the concerns here today, but I also want to address the delicate concern about the stigma and the bullying. Now, there obviously are examples or individual experiences different, but in my 22 years in Richmond City Public Schools, I have never seen an example of bullying or stigma for students who did not get an advanced diploma. That's my experience as a teacher. I also want to address the idea that well, I could be here and show you tons and tons of data and studies, scientific studies that show the cognitive benefits of students who learn second and third languages. The evidence is out there. Even if they're not successful at learning a language, they are more successful at other things, other skills, other abilities. But that's not what I'm here to talk about today. I want to talk about the advanced diploma and why we have it and what it's doing. The Department of Education, I have some stats for y'all too, if you don't mind. The Department of Education's own data shows that students who graduate with the current advanced diploma have massive advantages over students who don't, particularly in getting into college, staying in college, and completing their degree in 4 years. Some of those statistics show that they have 50 or 60% higher advantage than students who graduate with a standard diploma. So to that effect, the advanced diploma is doing a huge job.
We've got other speakers, so I'll ask you to limit your comments.
Okay.
Thank you.
But also, the Department of Education's own statistics show that more than half of the students who graduate with CTE certifications also get advanced diplomas. So the path is there. They can get the industry certification, the CTE seals, and the advanced diploma. That is a part of it. My question, and I'll be very brief, what is the data or the information that supports we need this change? That students who don't do the foreign language option, because that is the only difference really between the standard and the advanced diploma, are going to have the same success, that are going to be as prepared for universities. And the admittance policies of most universities require the foreign language standards. More than half of the states of Virginia's public and private universities require those foreign language credits. So I'm not sure what the impetus is. I understand the bullying, the stigmata is a concern, but if we tell students you don't have to have these classes,
thank you, sir.
What's going to happen?
Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Sharon Cariello. I represent the Foreign Language Association of Virginia, and you've received information from me, so I'm going to be very, very brief. This does create 2 advanced diplomas, one with foreign language and one without. And that's wrong. Foreign language, or world language as we prefer to call them now, precisely for the reasons you were talking about, are essential, and they're essential in precisely the CTE fields. Even the executive director of the CTE Association has said they want their students to be able to communicate with the workers they're working with. And our faculty are beginning to create courses. One of the best examples is in Goochland, where she surveyed the people that hire in Goochland. She worked with them, the CTE people, and she's created Spanish courses for those people. They go together. The other thing is this bill is totally unnecessary. Last year, HB 938 passed. It mandated that the Board of Education look for alternates to expanding the advanced diploma and make recommendations to the General Assembly, and they determined that there was enough flexibility in the advanced diploma. There were no recommendations made for this year's General Assembly session.
Thank you.
Good morning. I also have.
Good morning. Thank
things
you.
For the committee.
Thank you.
And I will also give one to your esteemed colleague. I'm representing the Africa Business and Entrepreneurship angle of this. I'm the president of the Africa Business and Entrepreneurship Research Society. One of the things that we do is that we help Virginia businesses connect with Africa. Now, Africa is not limited to Ghana, Nigeria, Kenya, and South Africa. Yet that seems to be the limit for many of our Virginia businesses. If you look at where you have 40% of Africa, it's Morocco, it's North Africa, it's West Africa. 40% of Africa speaks French. Yet we look at what's happening with Virginia businesses, we're very limited if we don't look beyond that. The other thing is with Google Translate. You put in Google Translate, you get a lot of answers. However, what you don't get is the ability to read between the lines, to understand what your partner is thinking about when you consider that over 50% of communication is nonverbal. This is the kind of thing you do learn in a foreign language classroom. It's also something that addresses the issue of culture, because culture and foreign language go together. So if I look at this with the sheet I've just given you, I won't take a lot of your time. I tell you why the next generation of Virginia will work in international business online and in person. It will enter leadership positions in government agencies and address the sustainable development goals of the United Nations in all fields. If I look at this, Google Translate does not give you show respect for other cultures, even if you can just remember how to say hello. Everything you can do helps, even if you've had very little language. If you look at reading between the lines, we have a low context culture. If you don't tell us, we don't get it. But if you deal with other cultures, they actually read between the lines. Language skills in the workplace, you have to think not only physically, but also virtually. I work with companies in Virginia who are actually doing that, and if you ask me questions as a follow-up, I'll answer them. But it's a mistake to take language out of the advanced diploma, because the competition, as Senator Hashmi noted, the competition is not Ohio, it's not California, it's Canada, it's Europe, it's Africa, it's Asia, it's Latin America, and all of them start foreign language in second grade or sometimes earlier. So world languages at the college level, right now people who do the advanced diploma also often get a seal of biliteracy. They start at the third-year college level. That means they're going to be the leaders in business, government, and in nonprofits. Thank you.
Thank you.
Look forward to your vote.
Thank you for your comments. Delegate, do you want to wrap this up?
Yes, please. Thank you. And I appreciate everyone's comments. What I will say is I love immersive languages. We have a great school in Virginia Beach. You start out in first grade, basically, and every class except for English is taught in Spanish. And it's amazing. Those kids are fluent. I've had 5 years of Spanish. I started in 5th grade. There was nothing to take in 6th grade or 7th grade. I've had 5 years of Spanish. I am far from fluent. If I go, and I have been places that they speak Spanish, I cannot speak Spanish. I cannot converse. Heck, I was in Mexico recently. 5 years of Spanish. You talk about culture? I was there for Cinco de Mayo. That's not a Mexican holiday. Somehow I am 40-some years old, 5 years of Spanish, and did not realize that they don't celebrate really Cinco de Mayo down there. So, I mean, I think that's lacking, but what this really comes down to, most importantly, is this stigma. You know, just think for a second. Everyone here has children. If your child came to you and said, Mom, Dad, I'm not going to get an advanced diploma, and you're out with your friends, and you're talking about your kids and graduating and diplomas and all that, are you not going to feel a little awkward that your child's the child that does not have the advanced diploma? How about vote tech? I mean, we all remember when we were in school. I mean, my counselor, I have a journal I kept because I had to for English class, that I actually wanted to be a car mechanic. And when I said I wanted to go to vote tech, my counselor called my mother And I had to go into the counselor's office. They said, no, that's for dumb, people that are, college or high school dropouts. And my answer was, I could be a high school dropout if I wanted to be, but I don't feel like it. And so this stigma really does exist. And if the foreign language, 3 years in high school, actually made a difference in someone's life or career, we would not have this bill. I'd want it. But we all know that 3 years in high school doesn't get anyone anywhere. You have to get them immersive. I would support more immersive schools across Virginia. But if I have the choice between 3 years of something that probably is not going to help someone get the job and a career and a living wage, and 3 years of something that has them coming out with almost 6 figures a year, I do the other. And all we have to do is get rid of that stigma, Madam Chair. And that's why I hope we move this bill forward.
Thank you, Delegate. I would argue that we need to certainly remove the stigma, but the stigma is removing foreign language is probably not the way, but rather doing away with language and terminology such as what you shared. A word dumb, for instance, should not be in our vocabulary when we're talking about any student. And so let's get rid of the stigma. Let's save foreign language is my argument. Is there a motion on the floor?
Madam Chair, to speak to the bill, I just don't see this as removing foreign languages. It's adding a separate category of advanced diploma. It's not removing foreign languages from people who want that normal academic advanced degree to go in and then maybe going to further their education, majoring in art history or sociology where they don't have a job and they get to repay their college loans, versus somebody who wants to go take some classes in welding or electrician or HVAC and getting that advanced sticker on their diploma, which doesn't take away from any other degree, and it's not eliminating foreign languages. I took 5 years of French, and I could not order a glass of water in France if I were able to get there today. And then that's not my teachers were great, and I appreciate it, enjoyed taking it, but I also could not. If I could weld, I'd be making a whole lot more money now than if I were a lawyer. And if I could have learned to weld or do electrician or plumbing, I'd have my own business and would be a lot better off than I would be with 5 years of French. And I'm sorry, that's just how it is. And my daughter was a French major in college and did it. So, and I had another son who was a Latin and Greek major in college. So I appreciate foreign languages. If I had a welder or a plumber, I wouldn't have to worry about getting old and nobody taking care of me. So I think this is a great bill. It's a great idea, and I move to report.
It's been moved. Is there a second? There is no second. Hearing no second, the motion fails.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Delegate. All right, moving. Are you a chair of a committee? And in 10 minutes, then let's get you up here.
I'll be quick, I promise. Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee. I have before you this morning House Bill 1556. This bill was slightly edited, and it took out the fiscal impact in the House. So what this bill does, these canine detection teams are already working in schools. And a little bit about why.
Maybe raise the mic up, too.
I have those.
Raise the mic up, so thank you.
Is that better?
Yes.
Thank you. So what this is adding guidelines to canine detection teams that are already existing in schools. They actually are already existing in schools of, I believe, members of the subcommittee. This is a huge opportunity to make sure that we are offering additional tools in the toolbox to school safety in Virginia. So this is a non-law enforcement alternative. These are contracts with local school boards that already exist, and they're asking for additional guidelines to make sure that we're on the up and up when we're contracting. On top of this, this allows the schools to decide the disciplinary process. A non-law enforcement entity does not get involved in that. And these dogs are able to detect drugs, guns, narcotics, vapes, anything of the like. It's non-disruptive to the learning environment in schools. And if anyone's interested in any of the school-to-prison pipeline, this is a great alternative, and it really, really enhances school safety. So with that, I'll take any questions, and I also have testimony.
Thank you, Delegate. I'm curious why it would be Chev that would be approving the contract with our outside entities.
So they're already going through K through 12, but this also will allow them to do higher ed as well.
So I'm sorry, this bill would also allow in colleges and universities? I don't see a reference to that in the bill.
So these teams are already being deployed. The one that we have present already is Chef certified, so they're trying to enhance the training mechanism. So if there's any secondary institutions, it will allow to add that to their training mechanism.
Okay.
So is it not current practice?
This is a really, really new opportunity that schools are using. Law enforcement agencies oftentimes cannot show up to schools on demand. This is a contractual basis that I believe is already existing actually in your backyard. That is allowing school boards to really, truly do this on demand, allow the contracting with schools, and allow for school safety. Oftentimes, law enforcement from rural to urban to suburban localities just do not have the manpower to be able to do this. This also prevents having to wait. This can be on a random basis, and it doesn't have to be disruptive to the learning environment.
Thank you. Are there any who wish to speak in support? I see our K-9 team is here. I imagine you're here to support the bill. If you would like to come forward and share your testimony.
Dexter will not be speaking.
No.
Oh. I wanted to speak. Sit. Good boy. So my name is James Overton. I'm the Director of Canine Operations for American Canine Interdiction, and we're here in support of this bill. We've been doing this program now for about 2 years in the city of Hampton with tremendous results. In the time that we've been there, they've had no firearms-related incidents. Unfortunately, in neighboring areas, they've had 23 firearms found in the last 3 years in schools and 3 school shootings. The great thing about this is we are a bipartisan solution. We're not putting more guns in schools. We're putting K-9 teams in schools. The reason for the Chev certification is we want to hold our teams to a higher level. So we're the only nationally accredited K-9 training facility in the state, in the country actually. And so we want to make sure that the teams that we're putting forth have that extra certification in place. We want to make sure that just nobody with a dog is going to go into the schools. But that's the reason why we do this. And also too, we're not putting another law enforcement team in there. I know a lot of the teams from the law enforcement community, they're overworked, they're understaffed. This kind of helps ease that burden, but this is more of a deterrence-based approach to it and more of a positive interaction with the kids. And we end up becoming some of the school mascots. So it's been a great program for us, and we hope to see it grow.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Is there anyone else to speak in support? Is there anyone here to speak in opposition?
I hate to come up after those cute dogs. I'm Abby Phillips with the Legal Aid Justice Center. At the Legal Aid Justice Center, we provide free legal representation for children and their families, and one of our focuses is providing free legal representation to children and families who are having challenges navigating the school system. So what we have found is a lot of times when there is law enforcement in school, there is referral to the criminalization of students. And so we appreciate a lot that this is attempting to keep schools safer, but I think our concern here is what happens once something is detected and what kind of referral to law enforcement takes place at
You'll
that
have
point.
opportunity to respond.
And from Legal Aid Justice Center, our perspective is that part of making schools safer is providing holistic support, including increased school counselors and social workers. So we gently oppose this bill, but do want to thank the patron for the efforts to try to make schools safer, and would appreciate any response on that question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the statement is actually categorically false. I think DLS drafted this originally with law enforcement in the title. That was never the intention. It was a mistake. The substitute clearly says these are non-law enforcement teams. So for those who are concerned about a school-to-prison pipeline, this is a private contractual basis. These are non-law enforcement teams. The goal here is to prevent the school-to-prison pipeline. The schools get to decide the disciplinary action once any item is found, because this is a private company. And so if anyone is concerned about someone being being charge or criminalization or the school to prison pipeline, this is the bill for you.
Thank you, Delegate. We have one more speaker in opposition.
Dr. Emily Yen again from the Virginia Education Association. So we have some concerns about this bill, especially the use for detecting tobacco products and nicotine vapor products, while specifically due to false positives. There's a lot of research showing that these canine dogs are effective at detecting gunpowder. However, the rate of false positives, especially for drugs and nicotine products, are very high due to secondary odors. And we think that there's a potential for just disruption out of instructional time, as well as having dogs, just the psychological effects and from these false positives. And so we have those concerns when it's used for those expansive set of uses. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, if I could respond.
Yes, please go ahead, Delegate.
First, I would say if there's a false positive and there might be a possible firearm found, I think that a false positive is a lot better than not having the ability to find one at all. Second, I would say that if we're worried about those things, then we have bigger issues. Third, I would say to what was stated here is that this is totally up to school boards to decide how they set the perimeter. This does not have to be disruptive to a learning environment. It can be when students are out of a classroom. School boards get to decide here.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other speakers for this bill? Okay.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Senator.
Speak to the bill. It sounds like a great idea, not law enforcement, and to address that false positive. So if the dog sniffs you and lights on you and you don't have anything, then it's over. That's really fantastic. False positive can't be as disruptive as that shooting we just had in one of our high schools, where then they closed it down for a month or something to get everybody and deal with the trauma where the 6-year-old shot the teacher. So I think dealing with a few false positives would be much better than dealing with a teacher who gets shot in her classroom in front of her students. So this looks like a wonderful bill, and I move to report.
It's been moved to recommend. Please go ahead, Senator.
I think that if school boards or school districts can have the ability to do this anyway, and if it's current practice, they can do it anyway. So I would move to pass by indefinitely.
It's been moved and seconded that we pass this by. The second is from me. That we pass it by indefinitely. Please take the vote.
Senator Peake? No. Senator Donovan? Senator Locke?
Yes.
Senator Howell?
Yes, by proxy.
Senator Hashmi?
Yes.
Ayes 3, noes 1.
Thank you, Delegate. Okay. I think. Thank you. All right, thank you. Okay, my apologies as we try to resettle here. I have a list of people who need to get to committee, and then I have our sign-in sheet, so I'll try to coordinate that. Looks like Delegate Freitas is next on that, and that is HB 1803.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a pretty straightforward bill. Excuse me. All it does is create a new requirement that if, and you can see this here, if the parents receive advanced written or email notification of and can opt their child out of any speech, presentation, or performance in the relevant school by any outside individual or entity. So all this is trying to do is basically create some additional transparency with respect to speakers that might come and speak to students, making sure that parents are aware of that and if they have options, if they have any concerns. I mean, you can imagine just a really troubling situation where someone like Senator Peake or myself could be invited to come speak to a school without the parents knowing about that. I mean, we would certainly want them to know that and opt out should they be concerned about anything we might say. Right? So that's all this bill does, and I'd be happy to take any questions from the committee.
Are there any questions, Senator Peake?
No, not right now. Any speakers?
Okay. Are there any speakers in support of this legislation?
Big audience here. Yeah. Madam Chairwoman, Todd Gackey on behalf of the Family Foundation, and we support this bill. It's reasonable information for parents to know who's speaking to their children. So thank you.
Thank you.
Susan Musket with Pro Family Women. We support the bill. It will provide greater transparency for parents, and that's a great thing.
Thank you. Is there anyone to speak in opposition to this bill? We need to get you a chair up front.
Dr. Emily Yen from the Virginia Education Association again, and we oppose this bill. We think that school districts can set their own policies.
Then I have a question for the patron, Madam Chair.
Yes, please go ahead, Senator.
So, Delegate, this is just a notification process, correct?
That's all it is. In fact, in its original form, it was written notification. We included email into that because we wanted to make it as easy on the teachers as possible.
And so, Madam Chair, second question. So this doesn't require an opt-in, which is very burdensome on the
Nope.
schools or not. So
No.
just notification.
No, Madam Chair. Senator Peake, all it is notification. If the parent so chooses to opt out, they can do so, but no other requirements on the school district.
Move the report.
It's been moved, but there is no second.
Did Donovan leave me her?
She said she would not be attending this meeting. So the bill fails. Thank you, Delegate. The next on both of these lists, let's see. Delegate Batten, you're on 2 of my lists, so we will prioritize you.
Members of the committee, I have before you House Bill 1909. This establishes opportunity classrooms when certain criteria are met. This is a teacher-driven initiative that allows for innovation in the classroom. So teachers who are looking to establish one of these classrooms need to develop a plan that includes the names of the students who are participating, curriculum, a description of how, when, and where the instruction will be provided, any collaboration that they'd like to do with nonprofits or business entities, and as well as criteria for measurements of student learning. In order to move forward with this opportunity classroom, the teachers must develop a plan, and then they must receive approval of the plan from either the school board or the administration of the school wherein the classroom occurs. Use of classroom space is subject to availability, and there is no mandate that the school provides space. It is completely at the discretion of the school administration and the school board as to whether or not a teacher is allowed to move forward with their innovative ideas, and I'm happy to take any questions. Also, the provisions of this expire on July 1st, 2028, so it is a limited time frame on this.
Thank you, Delegate. Are there any questions from Senator Peake?
I do not have any.
Are there any who wish to speak in support of the bill?
Thank you, Chairman. My name is Caleb Taylor. I helped develop this idea. I wanted to make myself available to answer any questions. I think this is a really wonderful opportunity to put teachers in the driver's seat of educational innovation in the public schools, and really kind of excited to see what they come up with. We've talked to a number of teachers that just are really hot to give this a try. So any questions as to...
Yeah, Madam Chair, question. So what is your involvement in academics and teaching? Are you a parent? Are you a teacher? What gave you the inspiration? How'd you come up with this?
I'm a parent. I'm an old man. I came up with this actually just having conversations with friends of mine who are teachers. That I asked them, like, what kind of capability do you have to adjust things? Do you have students that you think would be really good in one thing or really good at another? And what I started having conversations with these teachers, some of the teachers were like, you know what would be really great? You know, the school that I live in is located, or the school that I work in is located in a mostly agricultural area, and it'd be great to be able to form a curriculum around agronomics, still teaching all the math, the English, the history, and everything else, but building everything from the perspective of those things that are regionally relevant, or where we have community involvement in, and we don't really have that flexibility now. And a lot of times these kind of innovations are top down instead of bottom up, and we'd really like to be able to kind of push into that space more.
Okay, thank you. Any other speakers in support? Any in opposition?
Move to report, Madam Chair.
Thank you. It's been moved. There is no second. The bill fails. Thank you. And just to share what I'm doing, I've got a list of patrons from Delegate Davis, whose Education Committee has started in the House and is overlapping with ours. And so I'm trying to prioritize his committee members so they can present their bills and then scoot out and go join the committee that's in progress over there. So I'm just, I know we had people sign up, but I'm trying to prioritize on the request of Delegate Davis that his committee members get heard first. So for that reason, the next bill is Delegate Durant. Is Delegate Durant here? Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chair.
Good morning.
Which bill would you like to start with?
Oh, whichever one you want to.
Okay, let's start with House Bill 1929. So, 1929 would allow children whose parents are serving in the U.S. Foreign Service the same military exemption that active duty children whose parents are serving from the 1-year physical residency requirement in order to be eligible to complete for the application to Virginia Governor's School. So that was just kind of an unintentional admission for those students. So they would still be go through the same requirements that those who are children who are parents are active duty. It does not guarantee, their admission, but simply allows them to go through the application process.
Okay, thank you. I have a question for Council. Council, was there a Senate cognate on this?
Madam Chair, there was not.
Thank you. Okay, any questions, Senator Peake?
Madam Chair, I just point out that this passed 99-0 in the House. Maybe we should at least let one bill out here today.
Are there any speakers in support? Are there any speakers in opposition?
Move to report.
I will second that.
Yay.
And I have proxies, however, that, okay, let's go ahead and take the vote.
Senator Donovan, Senator Locke,
No.
Senator Howell,
No.
Senator Hashmi,
No.
ayes 1, noes 3.
Okay, thank you. And you have another bill.
It's House Bill 1928.
1928, okay.
So this was brought to me by school board members from my district who requesting that they would we would be able to allow some of the training for school bus drivers, some of those modules to be done online. So what this bill would do would be allow for the classroom work to be done as online modules, and some of the advantages that this would allow for localities is that it would increase the flexibility for participants and trainers, because this would allow for a seamless transition for them to complete their training as they move from one job to another, since there are often time constraints for those who are seeking to be a school bus driver. It would afford an increased opportunity to measure learning progress. Learners could track their progress and retake the modules for mastery, and employers could monitor that progress and provide targeted feedback. Increase availability for training, so they would be able to access that information on demand, and information is accessible from a learning platform could be accessed from any location. It would also afford localities more cost-effective and sustainable measures by saving money for resources such as classroom materials that would prevent them from having to print textbooks and set aside money for meeting spaces, and also save money for hiring additional trainers to provide various opportunities for learners.
Thank you. Is there anyone who wishes to support? If you want to just give a thumbs up from back there. We got a thumbs up from VEA. Anyone else wishing to support? Anyone in opposition? Is there a motion on the floor? Second, if you'll call the vote.
Senator Peake. Aye. Senator Donovan. Senator Locke.
Aye.
Senator Howell.
Aye.
Senator Hashmi.
Aye.
Ayes 4, no 0.
And Madam Chair, before the delegate leaves, going back to 1929, I mean, 99-0 out of the House. This is allowing children of our military people and Department of Defense to attend our GO centers. And we have people fighting all the time to have people who are in the country illegally going to our public schools and getting reduced education or reduced tuition at our universities. And that bill would not pass out of this committee is just shocking to me. And I'm very disappointed that bill, HB 1929, did not get out of this subcommittee.
If I may, Madam Chair, to speak to that these children, they experience a lot of uncertainty in their life.
Which bill are you speaking to?
1929. So these
Okay,
children.
we have finished our taking the vote on that. If we'll take your next bill, please.
So the next bill is on the Math Innovation, 2495, and we worked very closely with Delegate Van Valkenburg on this bill as a fellow educator, that identifying areas for learning loss for our children, particularly in the grades 6, 7, and 8. This would create a Math Innovation middle school program, and this would create a competitive grant program with preference giving for schools that are based on standards of learning assessments, those who are in rural schools and schools in economically disadvantaged areas. This bill would provide technical assistance providers to partner with designated innovation school zones to provide professional learning in order to prepare the innovation school for the shift toward a competency-based education model. What this would seek to do is to identify those strands in the curriculum where children have there's gaps in their competency and their understanding and fluency for algebra readiness. Oftentimes in the classroom, we have to move forward. And so the children, if they're not mastering some of those concepts, this is cumulative, and so that begins to spiral out of control, and they really start to struggle as they move forward into middle school. So we know that algebra readiness is a gatekeeper for many of the more advanced classes in math, the sciences, the computer languages, and so this bill seeks to identify those strands in the curriculum where students they got left behind, and they do not have measures of support outside the home, particularly those who are in rural communities and those economically advantaged areas, so that we provide in those supports in the classroom so that they would have an opportunity to go back. And I can speak from personal experience. I have an 8th grader right now who is going through those same things, and we're able to provide those supports. But as a former educator, I worry the most about those who do not have those resources in place to be able to go back and get those strands of mastery.
Thank you. So if I'm understanding it correctly, this would break down the teaching of mathematics in such a way that students can demonstrate competency in one area, then progress to the next area, and be in a position to continue to build on those areas of competency.
Exactly. This meets students where they are. So really, we kind of emphasize those who are struggling, but it also affords those students who are moving at a pace that they can move and get more advanced as well. So it's not trying to hold anybody back. It's not trying to push anybody ahead, farther when they're not ready to go. But it really meets students where they are, and that's the way math works. Is that it's very painful as an educator when these students have not grasped it. We've got to move on. So this allows them to go back and really be able to tackle those strands of it.
And allows those students who are succeeding to continue further at their pace. So one thing that I really like about this legislation is that it replicates what we have seen happening in community colleges, because as you know, community colleges with developmental mathematics, reading, writing, in developmental math, they've broken down into modular formats so that a student doesn't have to repeat an entire semester if, for instance, fractions was the issue that hung them up, and they're able to save money, save time, and get through. So I like the kind of alignment that we are proposing here between K-12 and our college classes. Is there anyone to speak in support of the legislation? And we got a thumbs up from VEA. Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chairman and member of the committee. My name is Kim Ritchie, and I'm a deputy superintendent at the Department of Education. I just wanted to speak in support of this bill this morning. We're very supportive of the creation of programs that establish evidence-based programs in schools for mathematics instruction. Of note, we really appreciate that this bill allows the department to prioritize programs in schools in need of support. So it allows us to work with those schools who most need assistance and help in establishing these evidence-based programs. Additionally, I would point out the requirement that providers provide reports to the department, so we will be able to report to the General Assembly the effectiveness of this program after it is implemented. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
One area I would emphasize is that there's often a mystery for even educators and parents when it comes to, they know that there's some concepts that students were not grasping, but when they start to get into trouble, it's a real mystery for them to go back and say, where do we need to go? So this will identify those areas and be able to give the students the confidence that they can be able to catch up and that they are able to do this kind of work.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Good morning, Madam Chair. My name is David Elena, and I'm with the Virginia Association of Secondary School Principals. And as a former middle school principal and a middle school educator for 32 years, I think this is an excellent bill. Anytime we can support our students with math and then do it in such a way that allows them to feel success throughout the course of their studies, we would support that bill. Thank you.
Is there anyone opposed to the bill? Is there a motion?
Move to report.
Second. Let's take the vote.
Senator Peake. Aye. Senator Donovan. Senator Locke.
Aye.
Senator Howell.
Aye.
Senator Hashmi.
Aye.
Ayes 4, no 0.
Thank you. Do you have one more, Bill?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
House Bill 2358.
2358.
Sorry. This bill was also brought to me by my locality that would allow to permit local law enforcement agencies to deploy a public or secondary school, a retired law enforcement officer hired by the local law enforcement agency on a part-time basis to provide limited law enforcement and security services to public elementary and secondary schools. This bill did pass the General Assembly, I believe, back in 2019, but I think there was some issues that reflect of concern with DCGS and that have been addressed. There is right now there is an MOU where a school board is allowed to hire a private security SSO officer that has much less limited training that this bill would afford. And in my locality, the school board has preferred that we hire that the schools hire a school resource officer through the Stafford School office instead of going through a private agency. So this would afford a higher level of training to go into what they are needing, particularly as in elementary schools, versus this private security firm. So this would give some flexibility to some of the localities if they're not wanting to go through that private security route instead, and be able to hire some retired folks who come in for eligibility. So.
Okay, thank you. Question, Senator Peake? Are there any supporters?
Julia Hammond on behalf of Stafford County. This is a collaboration between Stafford County School Board, the Board of Supervisors, and the Sheriff's Office to allow an option to localities. Our school boards are very concerned about school safety and security, especially around our elementary schools. They also feel less comfortable being the ones to hire retired law enforcement to be the vetting entity. They would prefer it to be the Sheriff's Office. Also in Stafford County, our sheriff is our primary law enforcement. So if we have to take from those within the Sheriff's Department now, we end up, there is concern about reduced safety and ability to police things outside of a school environment. So this would be a local option to help out any school division that wants to, but in particular, Stafford will avail themselves of this option should you pass it.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else in support? Anyone in opposition?
Good morning, Madam Chair, member of the subcommittee. I'm Abby Phillips from the Legal Aid Justice Center. As I mentioned previously, the Legal Aid Justice Center provides free legal representation to children and families. And one of the areas that we focus on is challenges in public education. We're deeply concerned about creating an entirely new officer that would be in public schools. We are already seeing a lot of challenges with the population that we serve with school resource officers and school security officers. So we oppose this bill and do believe that safer schools require investing in students and teachers and support staff more holistically. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Are you in line to speak in opposition?
I'll speak
No.
to the bill,
Okay.
Madam Chair.
Please go ahead.
I'll save everybody the rant that I went on a couple of weeks ago when we were talking about school resource officers.
If we could not rent today, that would be
Well,
that
I
would be
can't
wonderful.
promise you that, but on this issue
Well,
for now.
scream at me. It's
Yeah,
not at the
but,
audience today.
I would just, since we had that meeting in our committee about school resource officers a couple of weeks ago, a girl that made the news this week, 14-year-old in high school, bullied in school, assaulted, and then she committed suicide. That was just this week. And the violence that we have in our schools, from students on students, from students on teachers. I've had numerous teachers in Lynchburg tell me they are concerned about their safety, especially older teachers. One of them, a foreign language teacher who just retired because she doesn't feel safe. And that we would not do everything we could to make our schools safe. And one of these, we're talking about retired law enforcement officers who have experience, who have training, who have been through it, have spent their lives doing that, and that we would not do everything we could to encourage them to go into our public schools to keep our kids, our most precious assets, safe, to protect our teachers. I mean, we just had a teacher get shot, and then you're going to be stuck there with nobody who knows what to do in a traumatic situation like that, who doesn't know how to respond when somebody's got a gun or when there's a fight that breaks out. And so I strongly support this. I would hope that our legislators and our General Assembly would fully support safety in our public schools.
Thank you, Senator. I fully agree with you. We've got schools that are traumatized and need, our students in particular need support and resources. We have a system in place for SROs, and most of our school divisions have MOUs with various law enforcement agencies within their jurisdiction. And so I think we have the SRO program already in place in our code. I fully agree that we have students in stress and need, and that funding we need to increase for mental health support for our teachers, increasing the staff who are in our school classrooms to assist a teacher with large groups of students, lifting that support cap. All of those are very critically essential. And we have a robust budget in the Senate side to bring those dollars and resources to our school divisions. And for that reason, I want to see us investing in mental health counselors, support staff, ensuring that our teachers have the resources that they need, as well as our students. So is there a motion on the floor?
Madam Chair, I'll just say, after that girl got assaulted in her school and nobody was there to help her, they posted it all on social media and kept replaying it on YouTube and social media all over the place till she finally killed herself. So I just submit that it would be a lot better to prevent it, to stop the assaults before they happen so that they don't need the mental health treatment after they've been bullied in school and it's shown all over to the world on YouTube. So I would move to report this bill.
It's been moved, but there is no second, so the bill fails. Thank you. Okay, let me see on our list then. Delegate Greenhall, your bill is next.
So I am here for House Bill 2269. So and the purpose of this bill is to address the learning loss suffered by our students during COVID. Billions of dollars were given during COVID to our school systems, the ESSER and GEAR funds. And this bill simply says any funds over 20% of the allotted funds that are unspent or unobligated by July 15th must be returned to the Department of Education unless barred by other federal or laws or regulation. And then that money can be used for proven learning recovery efforts. The funds could even be awarded back to local school divisions. So this bill also addresses the third round of ESSER funding to our school systems. It's the largest infusion of federal funds ever to our schools. And these funds were allocated after most schools had already returned to in-person education. So the goal is clearly recovery. So this bill will require that school systems get approval for their spending plans every 6 months with their school boards and publish publicly how the funds were spent. So this bill has no fiscal impact. It's using the money that's already available. And the impact report actually said there were possible savings because these funds could go towards projects that would have to have been covered by the general fund.
Okay, thank you, Delegate. Are there any speakers in support?
Good morning. Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the subcommittee. For the record, my name is Mackenzie Snow, Deputy Secretary of Education, and I'm here to testify on behalf of the administration in support of HB 2269, which helps target large unspent balances of unprecedented federal COVID-19 relief funds on learning recovery. As you all know, the 2022 NAEP scores show that Virginia had the largest decline in fourth grade reading and math since 2017 in the nation. That's a more than 13-point decline in reading and a more than 12-point decline in math. Again, these are the largest declines in the nation. They are 3 times the national average in learning loss. So I think it's important to view this with that frame. By way of background, recall that school divisions have received $2.96 billion in ESSER formula funds through the 3 tranches, which began in spring of 2020. And as of January, about $1.78 billion in those formula funds remained unspent. State departments of education also receive state set-aside funds for the administration of state activities. And the Department of Education subgranted the majority of those funds back to school divisions. And of that total, $189 million in state set-aside funds that were subgranted to school divisions, about $123 million remains unspent as well. So as the delegate indicated, the bill would require that school divisions return state set-aside funds to the department should more than 20% of their school division formula funds be unspent or unobligated. And of course, that does not impact at all the $1.78 billion in unspent formula funds that would remain untouched. The bill proposes that the analysis must be done on March 1 and that the return of unobligated or unspent state set-aside funds must be done by March 15th to allow for sufficient time before the performance period ends for those funds to be obligated and targeted towards learning loss. And of course, they could be, again, subgranted to school divisions to address learning recovery. And as the bill and the delegate indicated, it would also require school divisions to update such spending plans at least once every 6 months and continue their public engagement process, which is consistent with the school division reporting requirements that passed last year in Chapter 2. And it also requires local school boards to approve such spending plans, which is not a federal requirement, but is an important piece of engagement. So given our urgent need to target these unprecedented federal resources on learning loss and learning recovery, we urge the committee to report the bill. And thank you for your leadership, Delegate Greenhall.
Thank you. Is there anyone to speak in support? Additional support? Is there anyone in opposition?
Before they speak,
Yes,
if
Senator.
I could, Madam Chair, ask the patron a question. One of my superintendents called, and he was concerned that he would have to spend his money. If he didn't spend it by July 1st of this year, he would lose the money, but the federal grants go until July or through 2024. Does that make sense? Do you understand what his concern was?
So, well, and that's why this specifically says unless it's not allowed by federal law or regulation. So federal.
So if they have until next year to spend it, they can still keep it and spend it through 2024?
I'm not sure that's the way I read this one.
Okay, Madam Chair. All right.
Yeah, Tom Smith Superintendent's Association. Yeah. Tom Smith Superintendent's Association. We've got concerns about this. Unspent does not mean unplanned. And there's a number of these school divisions, particularly with these monies, who have plans in place. They've got the plans approved by not only the state, but also their local school boards. This changes that groundwork. And so the way I read it is that if these particular funds are not spent by July 15th, then they're given back. Of this year. And they
also does say or obligated. If the funds are obligated, they don't have to be turned over to the Board of Education.
I think the issue is that they're planned, plans have been approved, and we ask that them not be taken back at this point in time.
Thank you. And I think we have some other speakers here, so if you'll please come on up.
Dr. Emily Yen from the Virginia Education Association again. So the Virginia Education Association opposes this bill. The reallocation of formula funds can't happen under federal law, so that's contradictory. There is a conflation with allocation, obligation, and expenditure. This would require these funds these funds are already allocated due to the nature of many of the expenditures funded. The spend down as well as the obligation is going to happen at a lower rate. Or I mean, like over time, because for tutoring services, you don't pay all the money up front. As well as other types of expenditures that have already been approved with state set-aside funds. So approval would take away these would not be productive when school districts are already productively using these funds. And as I said, want to re-emphasize that this money has already been allocated. So trying to reallocate at an arbitrary deadline with these state set-aside funds would be unproductive.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Before the the next speakers, I'd ask the patron, could we change on line 10, unobligated to unplanned? Which would alleviate some of those concerns, I think. Unspent or unplanned.
I don't see a problem with that, sir.
I'd make that line amendment to strike unobligated and substitute unplanned, Madam Chair.
Okay. I don't see a difference between the two. But
If
let's,
there's not, I want to make sure that that's, because that came up. All right.
thank you. Let's,
No, but just so you know, I do understand what their question is, because if you have a plan but don't have a signed contract, which would make it obligated, this way they can continue with what they have already planned, which I'm sure they can verify that they have plans in place, just simply not a signed contract. So I certainly understand and agree with that.
okay, thank you. Let's go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Stacey Haney on behalf of the Virginia School Boards Association. The VSBA is strongly opposed to this bill. School divisions have already developed plans with community input. These plans have been approved. The federal legislation that made these funds available gave flexibility. They made them available to be spent over a certain period of time. We have planned to do that within the time allotted, and this bill unnecessarily pulls the rug out from under local school divisions, and then it would just give the money back to the department for the department to determine how to allocate it, when school boards have already determined with community input how best to allocate these funds in their local communities, and we'd ask that you oppose the legislation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other speakers in opposition? Okay, any other questions? It's been moved, but there is no second, and so the bill fails. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, let's see. Delegate Anderson, thank you so much for your patience. Let's go ahead and hear from you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm feeling pretty lucky right now. Just so you know. All right, so Madam Chair, I have some material that is in the school libraries in Virginia that is graphically sexual that I've brought for the members to consider. If you want to just take a look at it. It's sexual content in books in public schools. The bill would say that librarians have to identify these books and put them in a compilation for parents to know that they're there, and then give parents the right to opt out. I mean, there's books of graphic rape. There's books of women with guns in their mouth. There's books with women being bound and tied, eating out of dog bowls, actual sex, minors being raped in our public schools. Not trying to take them out, just trying to say if I'm a parent, I should have the right to exclude my child from having access to these books. That's all this bill does.
Madam Chair, a question for the patron.
Let me just quickly ask our counsel, did we have a fairly identical bill in the Senate?
Madam Chair, I believe that the bill that you are referring to is Senate Bill 787, patroned by Senator DeSteth. And while by the title they may seem quite similar, I don't think that they're actually similar enough to conform or anything like that. They deal with completely different code sections. This one creates a section, whereas Senator DeSteth's amends an existing section and amends an existing requirement for school boards to develop policies relating to the selection and evaluation of all instructional materials purchased by the school division, so it is also more broad. I believe that House Bill 1379 is limited to public school libraries as opposed to all instructional materials. So they are quite substantively different.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. And Senator Peake, you had a question.
Delegate, was this in elementary schools?
Senator Peake, they are in public schools as low as middle schools. I haven't found them in elementary schools, but as you can see here, I mean, that's, he's saying spank my fat ass and having sex with her right there. I mean, that's not appropriate for 14-year-old. I don't think it's appropriate for a 14-year-old high schooler to have access to this, but all this would say is if I don't think my kid should have access to children being raped in schools, then the librarian can't check them out, and that's it. And these images would be criminal for me to hand them out to children. If I were to go to a 14-year-old soccer game and hand these out to kids, it would be a crime. It'd be a crime.
Madam Chair,
Thank
question.
you. Yes, go ahead, Senator.
So your bill would not require that these be removed from the library. They would just be require that the parents be notified.
That they're there, and then the parents can opt their children out from having access to them.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any speakers in support?
You want this?
Yeah, sure. There we go. Madam Chairwoman and other member of the subcommittee, we, Todd Gackey on behalf of the Family Foundation, we support the bill. Under our current parental rights statute, it says the parents have the fundamental right to direct the education of their children. But in order to do that, you have to have the proper information to do so. This bill essentially does that. It gives parents information to know what is on the bookshelves in a school library. It's not banning the book, as we've talked about. It's not creating any sort of, criteria by which you review or get the books out. It's just simply saying, let's create a list of graphic sexual material that any reasonable-minded parent would not want their child to have at any level of school. And so for that reason, we support the bill.
Thank you.
Susan Musket, president of Pro Family Women. Virginia's parents are increasingly upset about the sexually explicit books in their schools, in their child's school libraries. And this bill is the bare minimum that the Virginia General Assembly should enact to allow our parents to be able to find out what kind of books are in their own child's library and which ones have sexually explicit content, and to say, I don't want my child to be able to check that book out. That is the very least that this General Assembly should enact.
Thank you. Are there any speakers in opposition?
Madam Chair, Shane Riddle with the Virginia Education Association. I would point to we opposed 1379. Now I'm going to give you a little different view on it from our perspective. Last year, the General Assembly passed a law to allow local school boards to, and I'll read it to you. The department shall develop and make available to each school board policies for ensuring parental notification of any instructional material that includes sexually implicit content, and include information on 3 areas: ensuring parental notification, directly identifying the specific instructional material, and permitting the parent of any student to review instructional material. And Section C of that says each school board shall adopt policies that are consistent with, but may be more comprehensive than the model policies developed by the department. 2 examples. In Nottoway, in Madison County, in Nottoway County, 17 works were deemed explicit. Some of those works were To Kill a Mockingbird, Of Mice and Men by John Steinbeck, and others. And in Madison, there were 21 books. All my point here is, I just want to make the point that this is in current code. School boards have this authority to make those decisions. Even though I'm not in favor of banning these books, personally, the local school system took action to ban those books. And it was made on a local level by those school boards, which the code allows that to happen for each local division. We have a code that works well right now, and even though I don't agree with some of the books that have been banned from these libraries, it is in place and it is working. So that we feel that HB 1379 is just not necessary, and the law is working like it should.
Thank you, Mr. Riddle. And that legislation was passed last year, am I correct?
2022.
And that was Senator Donovan's legislation that you were.
I'm not for sure about that.
I'm pretty certain that
okay.
is, yes.
Okay.
But thank you very much. Any other speakers in opposition?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak today. My name is Nathan Seckinger. I've been a public school teacher for 20 years in the state of Virginia and a middle school librarian for the last 15 years. I'm a nationally board certified teacher, and I'm currently the president of the Virginia Association of School Librarians. In reference to HB 1379, just like the previous speaker mentioned, most of the policy as I read it is fairly redundant to the policies that already exist. School divisions have publicly available websites that show every book or material in the division school library currently. Any parent or community member can review school library collections at any time. Librarians regularly partner with parents, and as a school librarian, I often hear from parents directly requesting a conversation about specific books and books that a parent does not wish their student to have access to. If there's a greater concern, parents can already challenge a book using the school board's approved challenging process. More concerning, these requirements are going to tax educators and their demanding workloads and could cause libraries to close, as we've seen, as librarians review thousands of texts in their collections to ensure that they're following this legislation to the T. This would prevent the high quality instruction that's happening when school libraries that are certified are in schools. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello.
Good morning.
Thank you, Senators, for allowing me to speak today. My name is Lisa Varga, and I'm the Executive Director of the Virginia Library Association, which represents more than 5,000 library staff and librarians at public, academic, and special libraries. HB 1379 is problematic in many ways, but I'll keep this short. Throughout history, whenever 1 or 2 or 25 or 100 books are labeled an issue, any attempt at regulation or legislation ultimately scoops up many more titles that were not intended to be part of the original problem. This bill will not only include many more books than insinuated here, but also attempts to place a rating system on books. Rating systems, such as those for movies, video games, and music, are voluntary and unenforceable. And they also come from the source of the creators tied to the distribution of those materials. Any attempt at rating books should come from publishers, not from each individual school in every community in the Commonwealth, nor in the country. This legislation also attempts to impose a one-size-fits-all solution on local school systems who already have systems in place to address these concerns. It ignores the fact that students have a choice in which books they select from their school libraries and the role that parental responsibility plays in the books their children are choosing to read. I urge you to oppose this legislation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other speakers in opposition? Okay. Is there a motion on the floor?
Move to report.
There is no second. The bill fails. Thank you, Delegate.
I'll leave that material there for you to look at later.
And let's see. Is Delegate LaRocque here?
He is.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Hello, Delia. Simple little bill you got here. It really is, actually.
Do we have a substitute?
Yes, please. I asked Brian to.
Is there a motion to accept the substitute?
Move to accept substitute.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Okay, we have the substitute in front of us, Delegate.
Yeah, I will explain the bill. I'll explain the bill and the substitute at the same time for simplicity's sake. What we're asking is that personnel in a school would report a child who has decided to transition in the school openly when the student involves the school and the school personnel. Secondly, we would establish that schools should not encourage students to exclude their parents. We would define abuse so that it does not include misgendering. And fourth, we propose a basis for a plan that would, if a child was going to be counseled in the school, that would involve parents and perhaps professional counseling if that was the school's choice to formulate such a plan. That essentially is the bill. I'd be glad to. The substitute, if I may, is different only in respect to what the point is that the school would become obligated to report. So hearing testimony in committee, addressing questions and conversation on the floor, recognized there was a concern that as written and as passed out of the House, that there would not be an opportunity for a school counselor to just, we'll say, discuss a child who might be contemplating or wanted to explore the possibility of a gender transition. And I think we agree that those conversations could be beneficial and allow a child to have some not counseling, but basically just some degree of adult involvement that would be way short of a full-fledged decision to involve the school. So the substitute language on or about line 20 is written so as to, and I can read that language if I may.
Please go ahead.
Okay, so section B, each public elementary or secondary school, I'm starting on line 17, principal or his designee shall, as soon as practicable, inform at least one parent or minor student enrolled in such school if such minor requests that any individual who is employed in the school participate in the transition of such minor to a sex or gender different from the minor's biological sex while at school, including the use of pronouns that are inconsistent with the minor's biological sex. So again, in the testimony in the subcommittee, full committee, that is, I think, could be accurately referred to as outing a child. We've tried to structure the substitute so that it wasn't outing a child who would not be outing, because this is a case of a student who was openly transitioning or transitioned in the school, asking the school to participate, identifying the child differently. And at that point, perhaps the only ones that wouldn't know would be the parents if the student had not chosen to inform the parents yet. So hopefully that is of some significance in this. I think that what we've learned, hopefully, from Sage, who is the namesake of this bill, is that when a child who is impressionable, perhaps some degree of innocence, and going through a difficult part of their life, is making this sort of very important decision, that the school can play a different role. They could be encouraging, they could be affirming, they would hope that they would say, this is something you should talk to your parents about. This would obligate that, because some schools are doing just the opposite. Unfortunately for Sage, her life is a living example, or lived, I should say, of what can go wrong under what is in place now. And so her mom is here to tell us a little bit about that experience. We've asked her to keep it very short out of respect for the committee's time. And but I think there's other children like Sage. We've heard from many of them. This has a certain amount in common with what took place in Loudoun County. In fact, Jess Smith, the parent of the child who became quite the center of a lot of conversation in Loudoun, was here to join in solidarity with Michelle, who's here with us today. So Sage is one girl. I think we could admit that she made some decisions that didn't bode well for her. But what I hope the committee would see is that the school system could have helped her make better decisions and turn her toward parental involvement and perhaps counseling. I would point out to the committee that I think it's very relevant that there is a bill that came through committee that will require, if it's passed, 24-hour notice, maximum 24 hours before a parent is notified if bullying takes place. And the testimony included parents whose children were no longer alive. Now, I don't want to equate a gender transition exactly to bullying, but I think what they have in common is that it involves a young child who's in a difficult position, making a big decision that may affect them for the rest of their life. And I hope the committee would agree that involving parents in such a decision, as with bullying or other situations that where the child is preparing to make a decision, that it's better to have the parents involved. I have in this binder that I hope everyone in the committee has seen, and I won't read from it, but I'll tell you it is here that I may state some opinions, but I feel very confident that the suggestions in this bill to involve parents and to not rush to early transitioning are supported very widely by some very, very credible experts. There was a brief that we have used, and I referenced it in the House testimony. Dr. Erica Anderson, 40 years in a career heading organizations that are dedicated to best practices for transgender medicine and how to treat children from a psychologist's perspective. And very strong consensus that the best approach is to not jump to an immediate early affirmation, to evaluate the child for the full range of things that are going on in that child's life, and then definitely, almost unanimously, if not unanimously in this brief, was the consensus that parents should be involved, that the child would be better off if parents would be involved. So I just would say that I hope this experience that SAGE has gone through could be the starting point for some legislation, this legislation, to make it difficult or maybe impossible for another child to be kind of guided in the wrong directions, where the predators can be lurking to prey on a child who is just not in a right frame of mind. So with that, I would say that's a fairly good overview, open to questions and open to testimony.
Thank you, Delegate. Are there any questions, Senator Peake?
No questions for the patron, Madam Chair. We're going to hear a lot of testimony. I'd like to make a comment so people could address, who are going to address it opposite, if I may. And this is a horrible situation, a tragic situation. And Delegate, thank you for looking out for the person that happened to. It's actually in my district in Appomattox. And I know this is a very sensitive topic for everyone and a very tough topic. But and people are going to speak against this bill, and I know there'll be a number of them, and I understand that. And what I focus on is what we have seen, and the studies are coming out, and it's all over the internet recently, the high propensity of mental health problems and suicides for children who are undergoing gender identity issues, and a much higher rate of suicide. And so it concerns me that parents would not know, or that we would not share that with the parents so that they could be on the lookout for what their children may be going through and what signs their children may be going through. And I've talked to numerous groups and I understand that a number of these households and parents may not be supportive and could actually be dangerous. And I would hope to point out that any time a parental situation is violent or dangerous, that Child Protective Services could be brought in. And so as we discuss this, I would just like to focus on the part that parents need to know what their children are going through, especially if it's something that may lead to suicide, same as bullying, which we talked about earlier, what happened to that poor girl in New Jersey. So we have horrible bullying incidents, and social media has made it that much worse. And if parents don't have any idea what their kids are going through, it can lead to these tragic situations. So I hope we can focus on that aspect of it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator. And because there is considerable interest in this particular bill, I know we have many speakers here today, so I ask that we limit comments on both sides, 5 minutes each. So if we'll keep track of that, thank you. So anyone who is here to support the legislation, please come forward, and they'll need to speak into the microphone. Delegate.
Good morning. I am Michelle Blair. I'm Sage's mom, otherwise known as Nana. Because she is also my granddaughter, I adopted her after my son passed away. By the time I was able to bring her home, she had spent more than a year in 6 different foster homes and had a lot of trauma to recover from even as a baby. But what she went through in just a few weeks after she started high school was far, far worse. No child should ever have to go through the horrific ordeal Sage did. And I'm grateful that you have the power to change the policies that led to her abuse. When Sage started high school, just 14 years old in August 2021, she told the school she was identifying as a boy and asked the school to conceal that from us, her parents. So the school used male pronouns and a new name and told her to use the boys' bathroom. And they went along with her request to keep it all a secret from me. And their participation in that lie had a terrible domino effect. We were also not informed about the terrible bullying and the threats of rape. Why wasn't I informed? The thing is, like most kids who identify as trans, Sage had a history not only of trauma, but of mental health issues, including medication and a recent hospitalization, all of which I had told the school. I'm a volunteer CASA. I am trained in how to support kids experiencing trauma and mental health issues. And if I had known such critical secrets were kept from me, I would have had a chance to step in. But the school robbed me of the opportunity to protect my child. They stole my rights as a mom to support my child in her time of such dire need. 2 weeks after school started, Sage told me in tears she'd been assaulted by a group of boys in the boys' bathroom, and in fear, she ran away later that night. She had been given transgender websites by her school counselor and thought she was meeting an online friend, but no, it was a predator. She was abducted, she was gang raped, she was drugged, she was taken by traffickers, sex traffickers to Maryland for 9 days of abuse until the FBI found her and told us to come get her. When we arrived in Maryland, a judge kept her from us for more than 2 months. First, they put her in prison, then in foster care, based on false claims we were abusing her in connection with misgendering, which I found to be terribly ironic, since the school had deceived us about her claim to be trans. We didn't even know until it was too late. She had disappeared into the night. The judge placed Sage, my child, a victim of sexual horrific abuse, in the male quarters of a state children's home, where boys assaulted her again. Sage told me later that the attorney assigned to her told her to lie about her abusing so she could make a legal case all the way to the Supreme Court. And the attorney also lied and told my precious child that I didn't want her anymore. I was not even allowed to visit or speak with her. Sage ran away from the state home on Maryland's watch, which she was lured again to an online predator. She disappeared for months this time. She was drugged, she was beaten, she was locked up and raped and sexually exploited until the marshals finally rescued her in Texas. Today, Sage looks back and tells me she doesn't know who she was then, that she was never a boy, she just wanted to have friends. And yet every authority jumped on gender and made life-changing, disastrous choices for my child that we were powerless to stop. So this is why we need Sage's law. Sage is not alone. I've heard from families all over this state and country that have been torn apart by schools and courts, and it is heartbreaking. Unlike parents, these schools and courts do not have a child's best interest at heart. They are driven by ideology. Sage's law is as basic common sense as it gets. Parents, we need to know what is going on with our own children at school. Parents, we have the right to raise our children because we know them and we love them the best.
Ma'am.
Sage actually watched both of these.
we have other speakers who
Oh,
wish to
okay.
speak in support.
Okay.
And how many minutes do we have left?
I'm just about done.
We have 30
Okay,
seconds
okay.
left.
We can't fix what happened to Sage, but you can help
Ma'am,
prevent
it's
it.
30 seconds for all remaining speakers
Oh, for
as
all
well.
remaining
Yes,
speakers?
5 minutes total on both sides. So thank you very
No, I
much for
understand,
sharing.
Thank you.
you. And I'm very sorry to hear what has happened. So if we can speak very quickly, if you want to just state your
Sorry,
support.
but I find it hard that we listen to many more minutes of talk about books and we can't hear the victim of such terrible policies hear her whole story. I'm Laura Hanford. I'm a mom from Fairfax with a background in international human rights. This really isn't a partisan issue. Just in the team working to pass Sage's law, we have parents of all beliefs. Some of them testified in the House hearings: Democrats, Republicans, independents, libertarians, and progressives. Overwhelmingly, parents do not want to be kept in the dark. I have children Sage's age. In fact, my son turns 14 today, and I'm asking you to set aside the party labels and consider how any of you would feel if the child you loved had been secretly affirmed, bullied, and assaulted at school until she or he reached a breaking point and you knew nothing about it until it was too late. Think about it for a moment. The first rule of predators is don't tell your parents. The second is they don't love you and you aren't safe with them, but you are with
Ma'am,
me.
we've run out of time, so.
Okay. That's a choice you were able to make, Madam Chair. I would really appreciate it if you let
Thank
parents
you.
make
Thank
that.
you, ma'am. We have a few more speakers. How many speakers in support of the legislation, if you could just let me know? Okay, are you the last speaker, just the last two, or are you the only one? If you can just quickly, within 10 seconds.
Yes, my name is Ryan Heath. I represent the interests of Sage and Michelle Blair. I'm their attorney. I just simply want to say that, frankly, this bill is so important because what this does is it prevents school teachers and counselors from indoctrinating children into a cult, a religion, frankly.
Thank you. Thank you.
To be blunt, without this bill, more children will be hurt.
Thank
So
you.
thank you.
Thank you very much. 10 seconds, please.
Madam Chairman, Josh Hetzler on behalf of the Family Foundation and the Founding Freedoms Law Center. We support the bill. I just want to say that Delegate LaRock's substitute addresses the only concerns that we heard about this bill, so I hope you like favorably.
Thank you.
Susan Musket with Pro Family Women. We support the bill.
Thank you. Okay. So we have speakers in opposition, and again, we will apply the 5-minute rule. So please keep your comments brief. Please speak directly to the bill itself. So please come forward.
Thank you for your time. Narissa Rahman, Executive Director of Equality Virginia. The sole purpose of this bill is to harm trans non-binary students. It serves no other purpose than to put them in a safe environment, both at school and potentially at home. These kids deserve the safety to thrive, and when we remove potential supportive adults at schools and the support systems, we put them at great risk, not only for physical violence, but also impacting their mental health and their ability to want to attend school. Trans and non-binary youth have always existed in Virginia. They will continue to exist in Virginia. This legislation, will not minimize or decrease the number of trans students we have in Virginia. What it is only going to do is remove supportive systems and systems of care for these kids. Thank you.
Thank you. If I could just ask a question. So what you were saying is that with a bill such as this, then students who are already feeling vulnerable and marginalized have the potentiality of being further marginalized, feeling that there are no safe spaces for them to share their concerns and their issues and talk to an adult.
Yes, correct. Trans and non-binary students face, are stigmatized, and it's largely around the debate around their humanity and dignity. When they have supportive adults in their life, such as teachers, counselors, other school personnel, it can actually reduce their risk of suicide by up to 40%.
And we have the data and the research that supports that.
Chair,
I've seen that.
I have a question, a follow-up question.
Yes,
Thank you.
please go
I don't
ahead.
see anything in this bill that prohibits the school from working with the student. What in this bill prohibits the school from continuing to work with the student?
Well, I think the goal of the bill is to take information, that the student is living authentically at school and put them at risk at home.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chair. I
Thank
just
you.
must not be able to read.
Please come forward.
Good morning, Chair and members of the subcommittee. My name is Brianna Diaz, and I am Policy and Legislative Counsel for the ACLU of Virginia, and we strongly oppose this bill and urge you to reject it for the reasons previously stated. And I do want to add to one point that, this bill is framed as not forcibly outing youth. However, I want to make clear that outing is not a one-time decision, but is a lifetime situation where LGBTQ folks, queer folks, including myself, have choose every day who we come out to, and that is a risk assessment that we must take, and that takes that autonomy and choice away from youth to make that risk assessment of who they share their authentic selves with, and places them, as Narissa just said, at great risk of harm at home and in the school environment. And so again, we strongly urge you all to oppose this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good morning. I am Monica Hutchinson, and I am actually here speaking as a mother today, and I am a mother of a trans child. And I am here to oppose this bill because, it is extremely painful to listen and watch others just assume that every child lives in a loving and supportive home. They do not. As the mother of a trans daughter, my child has got friends who are trans. They have friends who are struggling with their identity. And sadly, at home, they don't have the support that they need to navigate this. Having that safe and supportive space at school where someone is just there for them, to listen to them, is crucial. And I understand that parents want to be brought into the loop, but I say this as a parent. If your child is not coming to you, there's a reason why. And there is issues that you have got to deal with, and it is not because of the school. I don't say that lightly. Like I said, none of us are perfect. No parent is perfect. But as the mother of a trans child, I oppose this, and I ask you to as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. We have just 2 minutes remaining on the clock, and so if remaining speakers will be very succinct and speak directly to the bill, and if you just want to say you oppose or if you oppose the bill, that's fine too.
The Virginia Education Association opposes this bill. While we have a lot of sympathy for Sage and her deal, we think that this bill would unintentionally put a lot of kids at risk of harm in a different set of scenarios.
Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Senator Peake. Jonathan Iglesias with the Virginia Sexual and Domestic Violence Action Alliance. Our sexual and domestic violence advocates actually strongly oppose this bill, and while we certainly have a deep well of sympathy for the experience that Sage endured, the reality is that this is not an actual sexual violence prevention strategy, nor is it a human trafficking prevention strategy. And many of our agencies run sexual violence prevention programs and human trafficking transitional housing, youth programs, and this is just simply something that would create an environment that is hostile and intolerable of trans identities for young people and push them into further risk of experiencing trafficking and sexual violence.
Would you agree with the statement that disproportionately the number of homeless youth are students or children that identify as LGBTQ?
Yes. I don't have the stat pulled up in my brain right now, but yes, a majority of LGBTQ youth, they're overrepresented in the homelessness population, and 1 in 3 young people who are pushed into homelessness because of conditions like this, within the first 48 hours end up becoming involved with sex trafficking and human trafficking. And so we are therefore creating conditions that are certainly pushing more students into these conditions.
Okay, thank you. Next speaker.
I'm Abby Phillips of the Legal Aid Justice Center, and we oppose this bill, but I do want to say I know how difficult it is for families to share their personal stories in front of a committee, and I do want to thank all the families for their time today and what they presented, and our compassion extends to all of them. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Okay. Any other comments? Delegate LaRock, would you like to close out this discussion?
Thank you very much.
If you would.
The amicus brief I referenced has many, many, many good quotes. I'll read one briefly. Every major professional association recommends a thorough professional evaluation to assess, among other things, the underlying causes of a child's or adolescent's feelings and consider whether a transition be beneficial. The American Psychological Association, for example, recommends a comprehensive evaluation, a consultation with parents and youth to discuss, among other things, the advantages or disadvantages of a social transition during childhood. The Endocrine Society makes a similar recommendation. So briefly, in response to some of the comments, I would say that the substitute allows a safe space. We can deliberately included a wording that would allow a safe space before a school would report. This only deals with children who have students who have outed themselves in school. We really don't want the parents to be the last ones to know. When there's harm, threat of harm at home, then there are the school personnel are already mandatory reporters, and we expect that they would do their job. I think it's an insult to parents for so many people to assume that parents would not act as parents do so often, and that is to help the children. I want to try to flip around the testimony that we just heard that says that a high percentage of youth who identify as LGBTQ end up either being sex trafficked or they are homeless. What we mentioned in this bill is having a plan in place so that when these sort of decisions are being made, they are dealt with as these professional organizations recommend, that there be a plan that would bring in professionals and include parents so that children don't end up being sex trafficked or homeless. That's the problem we're trying to address. They acknowledge that it exists, but I don't hear any proposal to deal with it. This is a proposal that would deal with the very problem that was just confirmed to us. So I hope the committee will support the bill for that reason.
Thank you, Delegate. Clearly, there's considerable passion and concern for students, and I agree with those who expressed thanks to the family members that came to share a very difficult story. There's considerable sensitivity around these concerns, and I think I hope ultimately, our goal is to protect children, children who are vulnerable, children who face considerable peer pressure and sometimes antagonism in the schools, but also children who experience considerable bullying from adults as well, from society that is not sensitive to or even acknowledging the reality of their own existence. And for all those reasons, I think we need to approach with great caution any efforts to provide support for the children, make sure that they are centered so that their voices are heard and that they have an opportunity to identify safe spaces and safe adults for themselves. And for that reason, I will not be supporting the bill. Is there a motion on the floor? There is no second. The bill fails. Thank you, Delegate.
If I may just offer this to you and the other senator at your leisure, if you may take it.
Thank you. Okay. Next on the list is Delegate Ballard. Is Delegate here? Thank you.
All right. Good morning, Madam Chair, Senator Peake. I have House Bill 2030. So I'm mindful of the time, so I'll just be brief in explaining it. The amended bill, which passed the House, it actually removed any language that would impact funding for schools or school systems. So by removing the funding changes, any significant fiscal impact is removed from the bill. And then the other significant change with the substitute is that we've incorporated language to convene a work group. So essentially, this legislation seeks to do two things. Number one, better inform families of existing options within public school system outside of their assigned school. And then number two, find ways for school divisions to continue to serve students in flexible ways via non-resident enrollment policies. I'll mention three other things. Importantly, number one, the bill is permissive. So it doesn't require school divisions that are not already doing this. It does not require them to do it. School divisions that choose not to accept non-resident students, this bill does not affect them in any way whatsoever. And then finally, Madam Chair, Senator Peake, the bill requires the Department of Education to post on its website a database of the policies for those school divisions that choose to participate, just a database or the policies to let families know how to navigate the non-resident enrollment process.
Okay. Thank you, Delegate. Are there any questions, Senator Peake?
What's the purpose of the bill? What's the issue?
So essentially, I would say it's a little bit of a transparency bill. It better informs families that want to send their students to another school division of how to navigate that process.
Oh.
So again, it doesn't require school divisions to do anything that they're not already doing. So a family can look up how that school division accepts students, what their policies are, and then be able to navigate it accordingly.
Thanks.
Thank you. Are there any who wish to speak in support of the bill?
Madam Chair, Melissa Velasquez, Assistant Superintendent for Policy at Department of Education. We wanted to clarify the department issued a fiscal impact, and we will be issuing a revised fiscal impact. We can absorb the cost of the postings on the website, so we will be issuing a revised fiscal impact. The only fiscal impact is the work group that the department has just reached its capacity of being able to form work groups with the numerous bills that are passing with that requirement. But thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Senator
Morning.
Peake, I'm Chris White with the Vector Corporation. I represent the National Coalition for Public School Options, and we're very much in support of House Bill 2030. I think the patron did an excellent job of explaining what the bill does. From a transparency standpoint, the real issue this bill tries to address is that a lot of parents simply just don't know that this information is out there. So having that information available so that parents can make some decisions around where they want to enroll their students would be critical, and establishing the work group would certainly be a thoughtful way to try to address the funding issue in the future. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Any in opposition?
Madam Chair, Stacey Haney with the School Boards Association. We still have some concerns with the bill. I will thank the delegate. We've worked on this bill. We just haven't quite gotten to a place where we can resolve all of our concerns. And so the concern that we really have with the bill that's before this subcommittee is with relationship to the work group, and specifically what the work group is tasked to do. The work group is going to be making recommendations on the implementation of tuition-free non-resident student enrollment in the Commonwealth. And so it's as if the determination has already been made that we're going to implement tuition-free, as opposed to having a work group to look at non-resident enrollment more generally. And this is a concern for us because a number of school boards that do accept non-resident students do so on a tuition basis, either the tuition paid by the parents or tuition paid by the school division in which the student resides. There's an example from Northern Virginia that I'm aware of, and I believe that there's others where school division sets up a magnet school or what have you, and then makes it available to students from other school divisions, but on a tuition basis. And so this notion of tuition free would cause some problems with the fundings of those schools. And so for those reasons, we still have concerns with the legislation. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers in opposition? Is there a motion on the floor?
Move to report.
I don't believe there's a second. The motion fails. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I will just ask council, how many more bills are on the docket?
Four more.
Four more?
Four delegates.
Let's move expeditiously because session is scheduled to start at 11. We have 6 remaining.
4 delegates.
Okay, let's. 5. Okay, let's hear from Delegate McGuire. And this bill is 1507, Delegate.
Madam Chair, this is House Bill 1507.
Delegate Rose. Get her out of here. It's going to pass.
Whatever you want to do.
Let's hear from Delegate McGuire.
Sure. So, Madam Chair, I'm going to present House Bill 1507. It's going to help restore trust in our school system. You know, we talk about a lot of different policies and things that we do down here at the General Assembly. But one thing I don't hear people say a lot is that no matter what laws we put in place, overwhelmingly parents are going to care about their children more than any policies we put in place. And unfortunately, a lot of things have been going on in our school systems that have been destroying the trust with parents with regard to schools. I actually have some photographs on my phone right here. During the pandemic, when folks were doing Zoom calls, parents were actually exposed to some of the ideologies or indoctrinations going on in the school system. And you can see right here some of these screenshots where they're talking about how Black Lives Matter is a patriotic organization in the United States. And they're being taught these things. And if you agree with that or don't agree with that, parents should have some say. So this bill has no impact on schools that are doing things right. Virginia already has a law that codifies parental rights. It's Code Section 1240-1, and it passed in 2013. And for schools that are doing that right, this doesn't apply to them. But obviously we've heard today in so many testimonies, like the books, those parents are not being notified about that. We talk about some of the children that have committed suicide. So this is a common sense bill that ensures that Virginia school districts are protecting parental rights and are following Virginia's fundamental parental laws. And again, this bill requires school districts to have reasonable policies in place to let parents opt their children out of certain sexually explicit instruction already defined and established in Virginia Code, to establish reasonable policies to let parents review public school curriculum, and to protect the privacy of their children in public schools. Numerous states have adopted far more reaching laws along these lines, including Florida, Georgia, Oklahoma, Idaho, and more, with no detrimental impact on public schools. And I'll make a note that Loudoun County and Fairfax County and other Northern Virginia school districts in particular have adopted numerous policies over the years that have significant impacts on parental rights with no analysis. Not even a passing reference on whether the policy impacts Virginia's code annotated in Section 1240-1, Virginia's fundamental parental rights. So I ask that the committee and the chairman act favorably on this bill.
Thank you. Are there any questions, comments?
I have a question.
Sure.
What was the comment you made relative to Black Lives Matter?
So parents should be informed on what their children are being taught. These are screenshots talking about how Black Lives Matter is a patriotic group. Now, I'll tell you what, homeschool kids.
Right there. Weren't people told that the Klan was a patriotic group previously?
I don't know, but if that's true, that's terrible. That's terrible. And if they were teaching that in your school right now, you would not be happy. And I would not be happy either. And so parents love their children. Homeschool students score 80% above the national average on reading, writing, arithmetic, and everything else because parents love their children and they're not being indoctrinated. And we need our school systems to go back to teaching children how to think, not what to think, and parents should be involved.
Any other questions?
No, I'm done.
Let's move quickly through this. I think we know who is going to be speaking in support and who's going to be speaking in opposition. So if those of you who are speaking in support can come up and be succinct, then that would be helpful. You want to give a thumbs up if that's what you wanted. Family Foundation, thumbs up. Okay, thank you. Okay, anyone is speaking in opposition? Again, if you want to be as succinct as possible, that would be great.
Sure. So the Virginia Education Association opposes this bill. Parents already have access to standards of learning, and this would put a huge administrative burden on both the school board as well as school divisions. So we oppose those bills for those reasons.
Okay, thank you. It's been moved.
Substitute motion.
Is there a substitute motion?
I move to pass by indefinitely.
It's been moved to pass by indefinitely, seconded by me, and we'll take the vote.
Senator Peake? No. Senator Donovan? Senator Locke?
Yes.
Senator Howell?
Yes.
Senator Hashmi?
Yes.
Ayes 3, noes 1.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee.
Thank you, Delegate. If we could just quickly, if you want to quickly summarize, I think you have support.
I'm support. I move the report.
Thank you for your patience throughout this time. So we have all four ayes on that. Okay. Thank you, Delegate. Okay. We have Delegate Wiley then.
Good long morning to you, Madam Chair and members of the committee.
Thank you for your patience.
Yes, ma'am. House Bill 1461 is in front of you. This is legislation that teachers have asked for. For children to learn, they must have an environment focused on learning. This legislation recognizes the rights of non-disruptive students by recognizing that teachers must be in charge of their classrooms. It tasks the Board of Education with crafting a statewide discipline policy that would give teachers the support they need to get violent students out of classrooms immediately. Students who violently disrupt a classroom can be removed immediately. Teachers will no longer have to clear the classroom while one student throws a violent tantrum. Teachers will be held harmless from reasonable actions if they are required to physically remove a student. This bill also tasks a work group with finding a way for nonviolent intentional disruption of classrooms that will take into account the needs of disabled, autistic, and special needs students who may be disruptive, but not to be intentional in a malicious way. School staff rate student behavior as the most serious issue to address since the return to in-person instruction, according to JLARC. Since the tragedy in Newport News, we've heard teachers time and time again begging for the administration for some measure of support in the face of violent students. Please note there is a fiscal impact attached. Currently, the status quo is unacceptable. The work group is the best step forward. I also want to let you know that West Virginia is implementing that policy as we speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. Are there any questions or comments from committee? Anyone is speaking in support? Anyone speaking in opposition? Again, we'll limit comments to a total of 5 minutes.
Emily Griffey, Voices for Virginia's Children. We appreciate efforts to address behavior in the classroom, which would include, in our case, investing in more counselors, specialized support personnel, and other ways to ensure that children are getting the mental health supports they need. Kids are kids, and a uniform, one-size-fits-all approach would not be the best way to address behavior. Thank you.
Thank you.
You've generated more opposition speakers than any bill this morning.
Good morning. Colleen Miller from the Disability Law Center, Virginia. We oppose this bill. As we know, children of color and children with disabilities are already subjected to disproportionate amount of discipline. This bill would remove the ability of school districts to be able to respond to an individual child's trauma, family situation, environment that may be leading to the behaviors, and we do oppose it.
Thank you.
Morning, members of the committee. Becky Bowers-Lanier on behalf of Commonwealth Autism, and for the reasons expressed by the previous speaker, we oppose the bill.
Thank you.
Ken Blackstone in Rico County Public Schools. We believe that the local school board needs to have the authority to regulate discipline. There's too many unique circumstances that require the judgment of the local principal. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Mike Asif with the Virginia Council of Administrators of Special Education. I want to thank Senator Wiley for bringing this forward, but we do have concerns about it. We do oppose it because of the disproportionate suspension and removal of students of color and disabilities. And so we look for positive behavioral supports being implemented more robustly across our Commonwealth to assist our teachers and with this discipline issue.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good morning, Monica Hutchinson. And for this bill, speaking for Rise for Youth, we strongly oppose this bill for many of the reasons that were already spoken before me. There's no reason for us to continue with the criminalization of our black, brown students, which we know this is what this will take us down. And when it comes to autism and other diagnosis like that, we also know that many of our students don't have the formal diagnosis, and so this will actually pull them into it. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Abby Phillips with the Legal Aid Justice Center. We're very concerned about how this would require schools to uniformly respond to discipline and does not holistically consider the unique needs of each child, and we are also very concerned that this would ultimately disproportionately impact students of color and students with disabilities. Thank you.
Thank you.
Morning, Madam Chair, members
Morning.
of the committee. I'm Terry Morgan with the Virginia Board for People with Disabilities, and for a number of the reasons stated, we don't support this bill. We think that it's not a best practice. It's not evidence-based. There are other options to support schools with positive behavioral interventions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning again, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is David Allen. I'm with the Virginia Association of Secondary School Principals, and for the previous reasons already mentioned, we would oppose this bill as well. We feel it would take away from the individual localities and individual school buildings to deal with discipline issues based on the needs for their students. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Any final comments?
Madam Chair, I'll just point but briefly. I appreciate the delegate bringing the bill, and I've heard the people talk. I do note that you make an exception for students with disabilities, and so that should be particularly addressed. And I just again state, when you talk to teachers, and we have a significant teacher shortage and a significant lack of people wanting to go into the teaching profession, one of the things they talk about is lack of discipline of students. And it doesn't cover one, it covers all economic backgrounds, all races, and it covers all parents that making excuses for their students not behaving or not making good grades, whatever. Not just anything we can do to make our schools safer and more orderly, I would support. Thank you, Delegate.
Thank you. Is there a motion on the table?
Substitute motion.
We have a
I
substitute.
move to pass by indefinitely.
Passed by indefinitely, seconded. Please take the vote.
Senator Peake, Senator Donovan, Senator Locke,
Yes.
Senator Howell,
Yes.
Senator Hashmi.
Yes.
Ayes 3, noes 1.
Thank you. Thank you, Delegate. I don't have your names on the sign-up sheet, so I'm not sure who approached first. So, thank you. Thank you for your patience.
Subcommittee, House Bill 1448. And Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, I'll tell you what this bill is not. It's not a change of anything in current practice. It is simply requiring that the Department of Education in the next year and a half look at the existing model policies they have, reference audiovisual materials and school books in our schools, and potentially come back, not mandating they come back, they could come back and say the current model is fine, but to review it. Madam Chairman, members of the subcommittee, the legislation that went into effect last July has, in many communities, generated a lot of discussion. And I think that discussion is best to be heard by having Department of Education open forum for all the stakeholders to hear that, because I would suggest to you, Madam Chairman, members of the subcommittee, the alternative, we're going to see a number of other bills next year brought from local concerns on either side. And I think the Department of Education is the proper arbiter to make suggestions that then could be adopted or just totally dismissed at the local school board level, DOE, and before the legislature. That's all the bill does, in spite of all the hype I've heard in opposition that kind of just candidly very much surprised me. Because this just has DOE look at their current model policy and have the stakeholders weigh in on that. The House amendments delayed the time frame until September of 24 to give them an adequate time for hearing, and that's all the matter does, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Delegate. It did generate quite a bit of public interest. I'll just share we had well over 150 emails in opposition to the bill. So you're right, it generated quite a bit of public interest. But
And I would say they didn't come to me about that, Madam Chairman.
they might be in your inbox. I don't know.
I check my own. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Is there anyone who wishes to speak in support? And again, if we can be succinct, we have about 20 minutes, and then we have to be on the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, members of the subcommittee. Todd Gackey on behalf of the and it's not on. There we go. Todd Gackey on behalf of the Family Foundation. And there was a comment made earlier about the model policies, Senate Bill 656, which was passed last year, which led to the creation of the model policies we have in place. And that objective was to address what the curriculum, what was being used within the classroom. But I think as we've seen around the state and concerns from many parents is what's on the school bookshelves. And so I think this is a very reasonable approach, which is to let's just go and let's make some recommendations that can be presented to the school board, to General Assembly, to local school boards to just say, hey, here's some recommendations about how we could address the collection, what's in the schools. And it is not to be mixed up with other bills. I think this is a reasonable approach to try and bring stakeholders into the conversation. And so for that reason, we support the bill.
Thank you.
Susan Musket, President of Pro Family Women, and we support the bill because, again, we also believe it's a very reasonable approach to a current problem.
Thank you. And any opposition?
Probably.
You have a few.
Just a few. Not as much as Wiley's bill.
Good morning again, Honorable Chairwoman, members of the committee. My name is Nathan Seckinger. I'm the president of the Virginia Association of School Librarians and a middle school librarian. What we found difficult to what we found to oppose in this bill is the conflict with policies at school boards that already exist. Our professional organization, Basel, represents hundreds of school librarians from across the district, and what we hear from our librarians is that our counties, our divisions have selection policies, and librarians utilize them each and every day. This legislation would provide conflicting guidance about whether a district should make choices to support those local communities' needs or follow the VDOE's model policies. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Senators. Lisa Varga, Virginia Library Association Executive Director. VLA opposes this legislation because the selection and curation of school library collections is a science. That's why librarians have master's degrees in library and information science. Each book earns its place on the shelf following criteria. This is a process known in the library field as collection development. Because physical space on a shelf is not limitless, trained librarians and educators are constantly evaluating their items for timeliness, relevance, age appropriateness, and community need. In a school library, part of that relevance examined is linked to whether or not materials support the Virginia standards of learning. This bill is based on the incorrect assumption that the State Department of Education is in a better position to adopt policies for the selection and reconsideration of all books in school libraries than the school librarians and locally elected school boards. It is inappropriate to make that the Department of Education, where there are 0 librarians on staff, to be consultants on such recommendations. I urge you to leave this responsibility in the professional librarians and the locally elected school boards, who are the best and most appropriate position to make these decisions.
Thank you. Thank you. We have one more speaker. And if you can just state your support quickly, or opposition.
The Virginia the Virginia Education Association opposes this bill for the reasons already mentioned.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there a motion?
Motion, I move to pass by indefinitely.
Second. Let's take the vote.
Senator Dunn.
Whatever it is, I'm supposed to vote no.
Senator Donovan. Senator Locke.
Yes.
Senator Howell.
Yes.
Senator Hashmi.
Yes.
Ayes 3, noes 1.
Thank you. Thank you, Delegate.
Yay, Wendell.
Last one.
My apologies.
So HB 1893 is a short and simple bill, and this is not about librarians, book ban, anything. This bill simply is this on?
What's the number?
Oh, I'm sorry.
18,
I'm sorry, Senator,
1893.
it's HB 1893. So under this legislation, school boards would be required to post a list of the textbooks they're going to use for the school year. They'll be required to post a link of curriculum that is being used and the standards of learning to which they are related to. By requiring it to be posted online, we're letting parents know what is going on in the classrooms. Promoting academic transparency can lead to better outcomes for the public school students and their families. This legislation will improve accountability, curriculum transparency, and trust, and it will ensure that Virginia maintains the highest expectations for all of its students. My understanding is there are a lot of schools that already have this, but there are some that may not be enforcing this. I know we've passed a lot of bills down here relating to making sure our parents understand curriculum. So it's a very simple, straightforward bill, and this is what we're asking for here.
Delegate, is this an unfunded mandate for our local school
There's
boards
no
then?
funding required on this. And it's, like I say, some of the schools already post this. This is just a requirement that all schools
Okay.
post online so parents can see the curriculum that's being used.
So
Just for the Texas.
some of our school divisions are already posting this necessary
Yes, ma'am,
information.
that's correct, Senator.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone to speak in support? Is there anyone who wishes to speak in opposition? I have a school board association. Are they support up and down? Just indication from the school board folks.
It is an unfunded mandate for schools that aren't already.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay, we have a motion on the floor. There seems to be no second for that motion. The motion fails. Thank you, Delegate. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you for your patience, everyone.